the magician in the world of Doraemon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Rescue. Father, what are you doing? SYNOPSIS felt his movements and immediately felt something was wrong. Run away by yourself first. As long as you survive, I still have hope. His father sighed. He was ambushed by the people from the branch family just now, and several important meridians were broken. Now he not only lost all his spiritual power, but also had difficulty walking. If there was still hope, after being ambushed by the resentful mother before, then now he is completely useless. SYNOPSIS shook his head and fled forward more firmly. I would rather die with you than leave you and run away. As for the token given to him by Junfei, he didn't think of using that thing. Because this time the incident happened suddenly, there was no time for him to prepare. And at this time, Junfei was far away in Japan, and it was almost impossible for him to rush over. In addition, this was the Lee family's family affair, and it was always a bit unreasonable to let an outsider intervene. Seeing that they were stubborn, the people from the branch family behind were also ready to take action. Originally, they didn't pin their hopes on such a clumsy lie, and it was more reliable to do it themselves. Several heads of the branch family took out a few pieces of talisman paper and chanted a spell. Spiritual spell, Soul Fire Talisman. The talisman ignited a blue flame, leaving a dazzling flame tail in the air. You despicable guys, dare you be more rogue? SYNOPSIS heard their voices and had to dodge these attacks. After dodging these soul fire talismans, he was even more tired. At this moment, the talisman attached to his neck flickered, and the time for the magic talisman was about to expire. He had no choice but to take out another magic talisman to continue himself. If it weren't for this talisman paper, he would have been caught immediately. The people behind saw that this guy actually had talisman paper, and they were embarrassed. Although the magic talisman is not difficult to draw, it is not simple. As the heads of the branch family, they were also very distressed to have dozens of people and him alone. Everyone listen, use the soul fire talisman to bomb the front. The people behind him immediately reminded him, Master, if you do this, you may not be able to get the secret book. But the master's face was gloomy. We don't have much talisman paper. If we let them run away, the consequences will be more serious. Although the distance between the two sides has been getting closer, in order to catch up with them, at least 6 or 7 magic talismans are needed. And they don't have so many talismans on them. Dozens of people behind all took out yellow talisman paper and chanted spells. When SYNOPSIS turned around, he saw the soul fire talisman flying all over the sky behind him, and closed his eyes helplessly. He couldn't avoid such a dense attack anyway. Dozens of talisman paper exploded around him, and blue flames shot up into the sky. Seeing this, the master of the branch family immediately ordered everyone to stop. After the flames disappear, everyone go and check the situation. I want to see the person alive, or the body, if he is dead. Because the power of the soul fire talisman is spiritual power, it will not burn for too long. After more than 10 seconds, it completely disappeared. And on the ground, there was also a huge pit. Everyone rushed over to check if there were any bodies in the pit on the ground. Master, there are no bodies here. Several groups of people reported at the same time that there was nothing suspicious here. People outside the circle also came back, bringing the same bad news. Damn it, they were clearly in the center of the explosion just now. Why did they disappear? The master angrily threw away the scepter in his hand. He couldn't rest until these guys died. Find them all for me. We must find their whereabouts. Go. Just now, Junfei and Zio-chan were looking for SYNOPSIS, and they happened to see the blue flame. And this direction happened to be the same as the general direction that Junfei sensed, so he immediately pulled Zio-chan to teleport over. After teleporting to the ground, they were in the center of the flame. However, the dark star cloak blocked the temperature of the flame and the incidental soul damage. This flame, I seem to have seen SYNOPSIS use it. Are they in a civil war, or have they encountered a strong enemy? Junfei waved his hand and cleared the nearby flames, and then saw SYNOPSIS and his father lying on the ground. It has been confirmed that this time it should be a civil war in their family. The time to save people was urgent. Dazi and Zyashin immediately went over and carried one person each and teleported away from here. A few seconds later, the people outside came in and began to search this bit. However, the main characters had been taken away by them, so they naturally couldn't find anything. Above the cloud, Yu and Dazi had quietly replaced the cloud with a somersault cloud. Because the original cloud could not bear the weight of so many people, they couldn't stay there. Looking at the two people lying on the ground, Yu and Dazi asked, how are their injuries now? Can they still live? Zyashin had some medical knowledge, so it was very reassuring for him to come to see Dazi. There are some burns on their bodies, but this is not a big problem. The most fatal is the injury to their two souls. Yu and Dazi walked to their side. I know, I will heal their physical injuries first. Taking out the magic wand as an amplification, Yu and Dazi released the third level rejuvenation technique on them. The injuries on Lee Zinayu and his son were healed quickly, and the next step was the trouble. Then I'll leave it to you. With your ability, there will be absolutely no problem. Yu and Dazi asked the soul devouring monument to help with the injuries of the souls. Of course, the cost of the treatment, that is, the mental power required, was paid by him. After all, the power of the soul devouring monument has always been very weak, and he also knew that the old man wanted to find a way to reduce his consumption. The soul devouring monument lived up to expectations and used its mental power to quickly heal the souls of the two people. Of course, the cost of this treatment was 40% of Yu and Dazi's mental power. But compared to two lives, this price is insignificant. The two woke up quickly, but they still felt dizzy. After all, the soul devouring monument only healed the injuries and would not replenish their lost mental power. These losses were worthless, and the soul devouring monument would not do such a stupid thing. The person lying on the ground was not his master, so why should he pay so much for them? When they woke up, they saw the sky around them and the clouds under their feet. Is this heaven? The first reaction of the father and son was to hug each other and cry bitterly. Son, I told you to leave me and run. Why didn't you listen? Lee Zinayu pushed his father away with disdain. Isn't it because I'm worried that you will be captured by them and then come to threaten me? Yu and Dazi looked at them speechlessly. I thought it would be a very warm scene, but this scene can be used. Then he covered Zyashin's mouth and threw it aside, and then I asked Dark Star Cloak to change my clothes and appeared in front of the two crying guys. You two are deeply sinful and should go to hell. How did you end up here? The two of them only felt that the sun in the sky suddenly became extremely bright, dazzling people unable to open their eyes. A male angel in white walked out of the light and landed in front of them. Chapter 302. There's a problem here. When they saw Yu and Dazi dressed as an angel, they were stunned for a while, then continued to cry. There is no hope. It seems that we are really dead. Dazi was shining beside him. His eyes gradually turned into dead fish eyes, and he was thinking in his heart, you should pay attention to me. Do you think I, an angel, don't exist? After they were tired of crying, they finally remembered that there was an angel next to them, and hurriedly looked at him. Angel brother, we are in the Celestial Empire here. Isn't it the black and white impermanents who are in charge? Lee Zinayu stared with a pair of innocent big eyes, and said something that made him very embarrassed. And as his dead fish eyes suddenly became more exaggerated. Yes, I'm so sorry that I took their jobs. I will send you back immediately. Then he controlled the somersault cloud to open a hole under their feet and threw them down so that you would lose his face. Help me, I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven to find a girl. Although he still said these irrelevant words in his mouth, his hands did not stop. Lee Zinayu's father held his son and threw Lee Zinayu up with all his strength. But as soon as Lee Zinayu flew up to the somersault cloud, Yu and Dazi closed the cloud. Dad, let me down quickly, I want to find my dad. He threw the somersault cloud anxiously on the cloud, trying to open the hole again. Your dad risked his life to send you up. Are you going to give up like this? He nodded without hesitation. Yes, how can a place without him be called heaven? Yu and Dazi did not answer, just looked into his eyes. Lee Zinayu did not avoid it. His eyes revealed determination. Because they were speaking Chinese, Chumushin next to him had a question mark on his face the whole time. And as he removed the special effects on his body, allowing his true face to appear in front of him. And as he, why are you here? Could it be that even you? Dazzy punched him on the head. What are you talking about? I'm alive and well. I won't die even if you die. He covered his head and asked in confusion, but am I not dead? And as he reached out and grabbed the uncle below so that the father and son could be reunited, Zyadishan also came over and began to ask Dazzy what he had done just now. After everyone explained everything clearly, they finally believed that they were not dead. They looked at the father and son who survived the disaster. So what are you going to do now? Go back and seek revenge on them? The two sat on the cloud and thought for a while, then shook their heads. Forget it. It's not easy to get out of their sight. The uncle gently touched Lee Zenayu's head, and I have never had much time to accompany him. Now that I have lost my cultivation, it's just the right time to make up for this mistake. Lee Zenayu also looked at his father. Yes, and if something happens to me, who will take care of my father? Zyadishan looked at them and thought of his own parents. They all had their own reasons for not being able to be with their children, but their love was the same. It's a pity that his parents are still busy with their careers. And as he looked at the father and son who were showing off their affection in a fancy way, stamped his feet and threw them down again. Go to hell. Don't you know there are orphans and left behind children here? You are still showing off your affection here. And as he looked at the two people falling with hatred, and he always felt very unsatisfied. After they were picked up by Zyadishan again, the two guys finally calmed down a lot. In the evening, they finally ended this 4-day trip around the world and return home. So, why did you two follow us into our house? And as he looked at the two people behind him with an unhappy face. As a result, the two guys didn't feel embarrassed at all and regarded this place as their own home. Oh, why are you so formal? We are so familiar with each other, so what if we stay for one night? The uncle was not ashamed at all, but comforted and as he turned his head to Zyadishan. I think you shouldn't save them, just let them fall to death. Zyadishan looked at the beer bottles and garbage all over the floor and said silently, actually, I think it's not too late to kill them now. Seeing him say so, the two handsome guys finally realized the seriousness of the matter, quickly packed up their garbage and sat on the floor obediently. And as he waved his hands again and again, forget it, I don't want to care about you. Just for tonight, leave quickly tomorrow. After sending them away, the two of them went upstairs to sleep. They didn't have a good rest these days. The next morning, after and as he and his friends sent the two guys away, they began to plan how to play. I didn't expect the world tour to end so soon. And as he leaned back in his chair, looking at the scenery outside the window board, Zyadishan took out a calendar and began to check things for the next semester. We have a welcome party in the 3rd semester, and we need to prepare a program. He looked at him. Why does the welcome party have to be held in the 3rd semester? Zyadishan shook his head helplessly. This is the author's fault. Because he confused the start time of the new semester in Japan. The semester from April to July is the correct time period for new students to attend school. And as he nodded, in other words, the author was reluctant to abandon the book because of incomplete information, right? Zyadishan agreed with his point of view. That's right. So dear book friends, I hope you can understand. So the two of them happily accepted the setting of holding a welcome party in the 3rd semester. But even if we have to hold a welcome party, it shouldn't be held at the beginning of the school year, right? Dekisugi flipped through the calendar while saying, yes, the welcome party will be held at the end of April. Hearing this, Daichi sat on the chair and yawned. Then why did you say so early? He put the calendar back to its original place. Anyway, there is only about a month. You can think about what to play. In the open space, Nobita was thrown to the ground by Fat Tiger again, and finally went home crying. Doraemon, why am I so weak? Why is Fat Tiger so strong? I'm so unwilling. The blue fat man looked at Nobita and put his hand in his pocket helplessly. In short, you want you to become strong and Fat Tiger to become weak, right? I just happen to have a good thing here. Nobita immediately became excited. What did you say? Can I really switch with Fat Tiger? Doraemon finally took out the prop. Of course, as long as there is this opposite world mirror. Putting this small mirror on the ground, Doraemon turned on the switch. and this small mirror is a channel connecting to an opposite world. Nobita and Doraemon walked into this room, and at this moment the whole world began to change slightly. These changes were so minor that even people with extremely strong souls like Deiji and Cousin did not notice them. However, the soul-devouring monument sensed the vibration and sighed slightly. Is the change of the world about to begin? No, it's not the beginning yet, it's just a precursor. He continued to feel the rhythm of the world, and his worries became heavier, but time is running out. Whether you can have the ability to protect yourself before the world changes depends on your luck. Chapter 303 Mirrored Action. Nobita and Doraemon walked into the opposite world. It was still Nobita's room, but in the opposite direction. Wow, this is exactly the same as my room. Nobita looked at everything in the room and excitedly picked up the comic book on the bookshelf. When he opened it, he found that the words and pictures inside were opposite, and he couldn't read it at all. He put the book back to its original place in disappointment. It's impossible to read it like this. The blue fat man pulled Nobita up. Okay, stop making trouble. Let's go and see Nobita here. The two walked out of the room and prepared to go to the open space to take a look. The road here is also opposite, so I should go to the right now. After finding the road, they ran all the way to the open space, ready to see what kind of existence Nobita was here. On the way to the open space, they happened to meet Sunya. Nobita immediately waved and greeted him. Sunya, what are you doing in such a hurry? Sunya paused, then turned around and gave him a seat without hesitation. I'm sorry, Nobita, I really don't have money to pay protection fees. Please let me go. Nobita then noticed that Sunya's clothes were very shabby, and he was obviously from a poor family. It turns out that Sunya in the opposite world is actually a poor man. Nobita ignored the frightened Sunya and continued to look for his target. Sunya behind him also breathed a sigh of relief. Nobita didn't hit him today. It was really strange. The next person he met was Shizuka. Shizuka here was wearing a killer outfit and hairstyle and was heading to the karate hall. Seeing Nobita, Shizuka kicked him to the ground without saying a word. Hey Nobita, you are very weak today. You are not qualified to catch me. Nobita twitched a few times on the ground and finally fell down helplessly. The Shizuka in this world is actually a violent maniac. Doraemon quickly helped him up. I told you to be careful. This world is upside down. People should look at it the other way around. Nobita pushed his glasses with his hand and continued to move forward with Doraemon. Soon, they met Deki, who was playing games again. Nobita thought that this was an opposite world and immediately went up to say hello. Hey Deki, what are you doing? Deki was so scared that he handed his game console to Nobita. Here is the game console. Please don't hit me. Nobita shamelessly took the game console. Now he was very happy to see that his rival was so useless. By the way, where is that guy Yonde's he? Tell me where he is. Dekisugi here was confused. What are you talking about? I don't know Yonde's he. Nobita and Doraemon were shocked by this incident. The opposite world reflected by the mirror was actually missing a person. This is unscientific. Doraemon, could it be that there is something wrong with your props? Nobita looked at Doraemon, who was thinking on the side, and asked the doubts in his heart. Doraemon shook his head. I don't know, but based on my experience, I would rather believe that there is something wrong with Yonde's he. Nobita also nodded. Yes, Yonde's he and you basically arrived at the same time, which is suspicious in itself. After listening to what Nobita said, Doraemon was immediately unhappy. What are you talking about? Are you saying that I'm suspicious? Am I that kind of cat? After apologizing repeatedly, Nobita barely calmed Doraemon's emotions and discussed the problem of Yonde's he. So if you want to know Yonde's background, you can only ask him, right? Doraemon also nodded. Yes, only Dekisugi here knows Yonde's background. Dekisugi next to him became more and more confused as he listened. He didn't know Yonde's at all. Moreover, who is the blue raccoon cat next to you, Nobita? Why have I never seen it before? In Dekisugi's puzzled eyes, Nobita and Doraemon gradually walked away. They walked a distance and then met Fat Tiger. Nobita didn't say anything and kicked Fat Tiger on his butt. Finally revenge. Fat Tiger turned his head and saw Nobita. He could only swallow his words without saying anything. It was not until Nobita and the others walked away that Fat Tiger bit his clothes to vent his dissatisfaction. I didn't expect that I would be so powerful here. Everyone is afraid of me. The blue fat man hit him at the right time. How useless you are outside. How strong you are here. He looked at Doraemon very unhappy. You just said I'm bad, right? While the two were playing around, they met another Nobita in the open space. When Mirror Nobita saw this Nobita, he was also stunned for a long time. Who are you? Why do you look so much like me? Nobita walked over and told him everything about the bullying of him by Mirror and Fat Tiger in the opposite world, wanting him to take revenge. What did you say? It's Fat Tiger, that loser? Mirror Nobita grabbed Nobita's collar and asked if what he said was true. Nobita was almost suffocated by this force and raised his hands repeatedly to swear to guarantee the truth of his words. Mirror Nobita casually threw Nobita several meters away and then started running towards his room. That loser is really rebellious. On the way, Mirror Nobita also beat up Fat Tiger in the mirror. Although you are not Fat Tiger over there, I will not feel relieved if I don't beat you up. Nobita and Doraemon in the back hurriedly followed Mirror Nobita, ready to leave with him. But seeing that the guy was so cruel, they were also shocked. Oh no, if the Nobita in the mirror fights with Fat Tiger, the consequences will be very serious. It was too late for the two of them to realize this. The mirror Nobita had already run out of the mirror and started searching for Fat Tiger. Nobita and Doraemon came late and used bamboo dragonflies to search for Nobita's trace. After a while, the high-spirited Nobita in the mirror met the former overlord Fat Tiger. Because Fat Tiger met Yu and Daisuke, he is now in decline and his prestige is far less than before. He has become a former overlord. Hey Nobita, what are you doing? Do you want to challenge me? Fat Tiger looked at the mirror Nobita in front of him and clenched his fists. Seeing him like this, the mirror Nobita also became interested. Will I still be afraid of you? Come on. Seeing that he was so disrespectful to himself, Fat Tiger punched the mirror Nobita in the face without saying a word. However, the mirror Nobita just took a step back and stood firm. Turning his head to look at Fat Tiger, Jingdakshin suddenly smiled. Not bad, a little better than the loser inside, but still a loser. As he said that, Jingdakshin twisted his fingers with his hands, and the joints could not bear the weight, and made a cracking sound. Fat Tiger was frightened by this momentum, and stepped back several steps in succession. He had used all his strength just now. Then there was a sound of beating on the street, mixed with Fat Tiger's screams. A few minutes later, Fat Tiger was lying on the ground, with scars all over his body. Jingdakshin sat on his trophy as a winner, closed his eyes with satisfaction, and enjoyed the result of the victory. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304, Answering Questions. After they finished fighting, Nobita and Doraemon finally arrived at the battlefield and began to think of ways to get Kagami Nobita back to the opposite world. But as the saying goes, it is easier to invite a god than to send him away, so Kagami Nobita was unwilling to leave so easily. Go back. Why should I go back? I think this world is much more interesting. I want to stay here. After saying that, he pushed Nobita and Doraemon to the ground with one hand and left alone. Nobita was lying on the ground, looking at Doraemon, who also fell to the ground. What should we do? It seems like we have brought back a disaster. Doraemon thought for a while on the ground and came up with a solution. Since he is so fierce, let's find someone more fierce than him. Nobita immediately said the name that he regarded as a taboo. Are you talking about Yu and Eiji? Yes, that's him. He should be at Demission's house now. And, Doraemon paused, then continued, after leading him away, we can ask Demission about Yu and Eiji. Nobita clapped his hands. Yes, Doraemon, your plan is really great, killing two birds with one stone. Doraemon blushed and waved his hands. No, these are all trivial matters. But you have made great progress. Nobita, you can use idioms now. After some business flattery, which was actually secretly hurtful compliments, the two came to the door of Demission's house. Nobita, Doraemon, how come you two suddenly have time to come to my place? It has been a long time since there were any guests at Izuka's house. After all, his parents were not at home. And there was an invisible barrier between Nobita and him, so they naturally would not come to him casually. It's like this. We have something we want to ask Yuan for help. May I ask if he has time? Daisuke came over from behind. What's wrong? Did that fat tiger bully you again? I'm too lazy to take care of these little things. Nobita pulled his arm. The matter is even more serious. How about we talk while walking? Just like that, Daisuke was taken away by Nobita, leaving Doraemon and Izuki alone. Seeing that the blue fat man didn't go with Nobita, Zyadishin was surprised. What's wrong? Do you have anything else to do? Doraemon nodded. It's like this. Can I ask you, how do you know you and Daisuke? Hearing that he actually asked this question, Demishin was silent for a long time before speaking. I can tell you, but don't tell others casually. Otherwise, you and classmate will be unhappy. Doraemon saw that things were progressing and nodded excitedly. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone except Nobita. You and Daisuke and Nobita soon found the so-called mirror Nobita, who was bullying Sunya at this time. I didn't expect Sunya here to be so rich. It's so comfortable to rob him. Mirror Nobita held a pile of 1,000 yuan bills in his hand. This opposite world really has a lot of surprises. Sunya on the ground saw Yu and Daisuke coming and hurriedly asked him for help. Yu and classmate, save me. I'll treat you to French high-end cuisine. Yu and Daisuke, who was standing in place, heard the word eat and immediately became motivated. Although he couldn't eat much, the taste of the food must be excellent. Kagami Nobita also saw Yu and Daisuke, who was regarded as their savior, and put down Sunya. You ignorant guy, are you going to stop me? Then die. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu and Daisuke appeared in front of him 10 meters away. Thank you for the meal you contributed to me. Now say goodbye. Kagami Nobita's nerves did not react at all, and he was punched to the ground by Yu and Daisuke. Forced to lie down, Kagami Nobita began to think about life. Who am I? Where am I? What should I do? Kagami Nobita can't get up again. Nobita saw Yu and Daisuke knock Kagami Nobita down so easily, and he was stunned for a long time. Although Kagami Nobita is the strongest among ordinary people, he is still far behind Yu and Daisuke, who transcends ordinary people. Even if I'm in the opposite world, I'm still not Yu and Daisuke's opponent. He thought bitterly in his heart, and at the same time, went over to carry Kagami Nobita back home. I'm really sorry to bother you today, but I don't think we will have a chance to meet again, right? Nobita sent Mirror Nobita back to the opposite world, and then he closed the opposite world mirror. Doraemon should still be at Izuka Tsuji's place now. I have to go over and take a look. Nobita left the room, and then several cracks gradually appeared on the mirror of the opposite world mirror. The soul-devouring monument discovered the changes in the world and sent the soul to the heaven and earth to carefully sense. Has the law of reversal and the small fragment been recovered? When Sunya saw that Yu and Daisuke had saved him, he immediately invited him to eat their high-end cuisine after getting up. Although Yu and Daisuke was always a little unhappy with him, he could tolerate all this in front of delicious food. So he happily came to Sunya's house, ready to taste the delicious food he promised. Doraemon also listened to Yu and Daisuke's story, took out a tissue, and started to blow his nose. It's so pitiful. It turns out that Yu and Daisuke's life story is like this. No wonder he has always been so cold. Woo woo. After listening to Zyadishin's story, Doraemon solved many of his doubts about Yu and Daisuke. But there are still some things that cannot be explained, such as why the sun god chose him. Don't worry, I will never tell these things to others. Doraemon promised Dekishin and left here quickly. Zyadishin looked at his back as he left, a little worried. I don't know if I'm right or wrong to do this, and what will Daisuke think? After standing at the door for a while, he turned back to the house. On the way back, Doraemon met Nobita and told him about Yu and Daisuke. What did you say? Yu and Daisuke is an orphan now, but he was adopted. Before he finished speaking, Doraemon covered his mouth. Keep your voice down. If others hear us, we will be miserable. Nobita then remembered that, if this matter was publicized, Yu and Daisuke would never let him, the culprit, go. With his brutal temper, he would definitely let himself die without a burial place. The two hurried back home, and then began to discuss this matter. Is it possible that in the opposite world mirror, Yu and Daisuke is already dead? Nobita put forward his conjecture, and Doraemon began to seriously think about this possibility. What you said is not impossible. After all, Deki-shan may not have gone to save him over there. The two chatted for a long time, and finally told all their conjectures about Yu and Daisuke. After chatting, Doraemon prepared to recycle the opposite world mirror. Nobita, what's going on? Why did this mirror break? The blue fat man pointed to the cracked mirror, and began to question Nobita. But Nobita didn't know anything, so naturally he couldn't tell the reason. In the end, Doraemon put away the props helplessly without saying much. What's wrong? Is that reverse world mirror very expensive? Doraemon shook his head. That's not the case. This prop was given as a souvenir from the lottery. It has commemorative significance. Nobita knelt in front of Doraemon and lowered his head. I'm sorry, it's my fault. If I had taken good care of it, none of this would have happened. Chapter 305 Jungle Can. Doraemon took Nobita's hand. It's okay, it's just a mirror. How can it compare to you? Nobita held Doraemon's hand tightly, tears in his eyes. A pink light came out between the two again, making it impossible to look directly at them. And Yu and as he finally finished his meal and returned home, Zyadishan was waiting for him in the room. Seeing Daisuke coming back, Zyadishan stood up and apologized to him. I told Doraemon about your matter today. Sorry, I didn't get your permission. He didn't care much about it. After all, so much time had passed, and he was not actually the person involved. Just say it, as long as they don't spread it everywhere. By the way, you won't tell them that I'm a magician. Zyadishan shook his head quickly. Don't worry, I know about this matter, and I didn't tell them. That's it, don't worry about the others. Just read the book with peace of mind. Zang answered him casually, and then lay on the bed ready to be a salted fish. My magic power is almost enough for another talisman. I should be able to carve the sixth seal tomorrow. Let's take a day off this afternoon. It's not good to practice all day long. Zyadishan continued to look at the books borrowed from the library and spent the afternoon with a smile. In the evening, the two of them cooked a sumptuous dinner together, which ended this fulfilling but dull day. After getting up the next morning, Yu and Daisuke practiced magic for half an hour as usual, and then went out. Today is Saturday, so the streets are very deserted at this time. How it's still dark. It seems that last winter is really not over. He habitually blew on his hands to relieve his coldness. Although with his current physique, he is not afraid of this little cold air at all. The owner of the bun shop still got up so early, sat up inside at the sparse crowd at the door. After Yu and Daisuke finished his meal, he asked him, "Boss, what's wrong with you? I haven't seen you for a few days. Why do you become so depressed?" He packed the food that Yu and Daisuke wanted, because business has been getting harder and harder recently. If it's hard, can't you just find a way to advertise it? Yu and Daisuke said somewhat assumingly. The boss handed him the food and touched his head at the same time. If it's as simple as you said, it would cost a lot of money. Yu and Daisuke took the breakfast with some helplessness. Why can't he change this habit of touching other people's heads? Well, I don't have any good ideas. I can only wish you a prosperous business. After paying for the meal, he turned around and left the breakfast shop. The shop owner was very happy. Thank you for your blessing, Kit, haha. To be honest, he was able to stick to it for decades, just because he hoped that more people could taste the food. This shop called Shiacheo Wansen Lao is still very good, and the taste is very good. Although the shop is not very big, many people are willing to buy there. The business is not so good recently, because the old customers haven't come. After all, children nowadays like cakes, and fewer people come here to eat buns. When they got home, Zyadishan had already gotten up and was reading a book in the room. After they finished breakfast together, they began to worry about today's day. In the afternoon, Nobita finished reading an adventure comic, and his mind began to wander. Hey Doraemon, do you have anything that can be used for an adventure? Doraemon said helplessly. Don't think about it. That kind of props are very dangerous. And haven't we experienced enough adventures before? Nobita heard the blue fat man say that he had it, and then he didn't care about anything else, and began to hug him and beg, Doraemon, just lend it to me. Look at me. 10,000 words omitted below. The blue fat man finally couldn't bear it anymore, and stretched out his hand to push Nobita away. Okay, don't you just want a very safe adventure? As he said that, Doraemon's hand reached into his pocket and began to search for props. Really? You want to take an adventure, but you don't want to take any risk. Is this still an adventure? Jungle can. The blue fat man searched in his pocket for a long time and finally found this prop. This can create a jungle, and the difficulty of the adventure is determined by you. Let's try the easy difficulty jungle. Doraemon looked around and found that Nobita's room was too small to open the can here, so he took the lead and walked out. Let's go to the open space. It's more suitable for adventure. The two ran to the open space, put the can in the middle, and turned the knob to the easy part. Then the two of them quickly stepped back and stood at the edge of the open space. After a few seconds, the can began to open gradually, and green vines spread out, followed by trees, gradually forming a forest. Wow, what a magical item. Doraemon, how far can this item spread? The blue fat man searched for information in his mind and gave a reply. If nothing unexpected happens, the simple difficulty should spread to the entire open space. A few minutes later, the open space was completely covered by the green forest, and the sun outside could not be seen. Nobita and Doraemon walked in, and the world inside was more beautiful than they imagined. The trees were full of blue crystals, all emitting a faint glow. The whole forest was illuminated beautifully by this light. The most eye-catching thing was the big tree in the middle of the forest. The tree was 8 meters tall, and the trunk was so thick that 2 people couldn't hug it. Seeing this scene, Nobita ran out immediately. Doraemon shouted quickly, "Hey, Nobita. Didn't you say you wanted to come here for adventure? Why did you suddenly leave here?" "Because I want to find Shizuka to come and play with me." "Doraemon, you go back first." Nobita ran away without looking back, leaving Doraemon alone in a daze. What? This guy only has Shizuka in his heart. It's abominable. Just when Doraemon turned into an energy-saving lead, a sweet cat cry came from the side. He turned his head with a little surprise. "Xiaomi, why are you here?" "I'm so sorry, I forgot." Xiaomi called Doraemon a few times with some dissatisfaction. The blue fat man quickly apologized and hugged his girlfriend. "I'm so sorry, because Nobita suddenly wanted to take an adventure, so I forgot our agreement." Then the blue fat man put on the bamboo dragonfly and flew to the roof of the building with Xiaomi in his arms. They usually date here and eat some dried fish and other foods. Of course, this Xiaomi is also very good to Doraemon and often shares his favorite dried bonito with him. So their relationship started to grow, and now they are officially lovers. Nobita and Shizuka came to the open space, and under Nobita's guidance, Shizuka walked into the jungle. After entering the grove, Shizuka was attracted by the scenery inside. Wow, this place is really beautiful. Looking at the grove, Shizuka couldn't help but exclaimed. Nobita was watching her silently, thinking to himself, no matter how beautiful this place is, it's not as beautiful as you, Shizuka. Chapter 306 Dragon's Lair. Just as Nobita and Shizuka were happily chatting in the woods, a little black cat walked in front of the jungle can. Meow, what is this? The black cat looked at the can carefully and curiously stretched out its claws to fiddle with the roulette wheel. So, the difficulty of the jungle can changed from easy to difficult. The jungle began to extend again, including the open space and the houses on both sides. And this is not over yet. The spreading trend has not stopped, and the scope of the jungle has further expanded. In the jungle, those beautiful blue crystals withered instantly, replaced by pairs of blood red eyes. Nobita, why has this place suddenly become so gloomy? Shizuka was frightened by this scene and leaned on Nobita's arms, making Nobita instantly enter the fanboy mode. It's okay, Shizuka, there is no danger here, there is no need to be afraid. Nobita touched his head, his face red like a tomato. He now hopes that this moment can last forever, so that Shizuka will never leave his side. I didn't expect Doraemon to be so good to me, I must thank him well. Just as Nobita was immersed in his own world, danger quietly came. A leopard jumped out from the side. Nobita quickly pushed Shizuka aside and squatted down to avoid the attack. Nobita, why is there a leopard here? Nobita finally realized that something was wrong, and he started to run away with Shizuka, and then a scream broke through the sky. Doraemon, help me. The blue fat man in the distance vaguely felt that something was wrong, and hurriedly apologized to Xiaomi, and rushed to the jungle in the open space. Dazi and Zyashin also noticed the spreading green in the distance, put down their work, and went to take a look. When the large army arrived in front of the jungle, this place should be called a forest. Each tree was 4 or 5 meters high, and the ground was also covered with thorns and vines. There were constant wolf howls in the distance. Even people outside could hear it clearly, which made people shudder. What's going on? Is there an invasion of alien creatures? Gian as he looked at the inexplicably extra forest and began to mobilize his magic power to prepare for battle. This forest is so big, the diameter should be more than 3 kilometers now. Dazi released his detection skills and looked at the situation inside. But this forest is a bit strange. Although it is very dense, there are no threatening creatures. Gian Dazi also found something wrong, and what surprised me most is that it didn't destroy any houses. Doraemon wiped his sweat beside him. He was the culprit of all this. In fact, this is not a real forest, but just one of my props. It seems to be out of control. When everyone present heard this, they immediately looked at Doraemon with malicious eyes. Why did you make trouble again? The blue fat man waved his hand to comfort everyone, but it's okay. As long as the difficulty of this thing is not hell, it should be no problem for you. After hearing his words, Gian Dazi not only did not feel relieved, but a bad feeling surged in his heart. You are setting a flag. Zyashin followed the direction in the cartoon and continued to ask Doraemon about what would happen after the forest turned into hell. If the difficulty becomes hell, what will happen here? Before the difficulty becomes hell, the creatures here are just common creatures, and their speed and physical strength will even be reduced. Then Doraemon paused for a long time, and even his face became gloomy, as if something big was going to happen. But after the difficulty becomes hell, not only will the beasts become more ferocious, but legendary creatures will also appear. After hearing this, they were all shocked. Legendary creatures? Yes, it's the dragon in Western legends that can turn the forest into hell. Then Doraemon waved his hand. It's okay. It seems that the difficulty here is just difficult now, and it's not hell yet. Don't worry for the time being. Gian Dazi nodded. Okay, let's solve the problem in the forest before the problem becomes more serious. Just as they were about to go to the forest, the situation changed again. A black dragon soared into the sky in the woods. 5 seconds ago, the cat scratched the knob with its claws again, turning the difficulty into hell. Then the cat was frightened by the black dragon and ran away. They had to retreat because the forest began to expand again. Some of the trees in the forest began to wither, and a castle surrounded by flames rose in the center. The dragon flew around the forest in the air and then returned to the castle. Seeing this, Gian Dazi shouted excitedly, "Great, a fire dragon has appeared in the black forest. Moz, bring water balls." Zyashin, who was standing next to him, saw Dazi saying a lot of meaningless words and immediately covered his face. Who is this guy? How come I know him? Soul Devouring Monument also began to shout, "Quick, that dragon, you must kill it." Why? What's the benefit of killing it? He reminded Gian Dazi excitedly, the blood of the dragon is a good tonic. It has a miraculous effect on your body. At this time, Gian Dazi had already rushed into the forest. Why didn't you say it earlier? If you had said it earlier, I would have personally released him. Zyashin received his message and asked him to stop others outside. You don't have the ability to protect yourself. Don't go in. Demishin stopped Doraemon and the others diligently, waiting for Gian Dazi's triumphant return. Dark Star Cloak, Dark Blade and other magic weapons also appeared on him one by one. Look at me, the Dragon Slayer Pantheon. Today I will really slay a dragon. The Dark Star Cloak immediately transformed and gradually surrounded my body. A dark red armor slowly appeared on my body with an indestructible shield. This is Sparta. Monsters, die. With the roar of Gian Dazi, he knocked away several black panthers that blocked his way. In just 1 minute, he appeared outside the door of the fire castle. Hey, isn't this Nobita? How did you become like this? Now Nobita was lying outside the castle, trying to crawl into the castle. Gian Dazi stepped forward and asked, "Young man, why are you lying here?" Nobita saw that it was a man who looked very strong, and immediately began to cry about his tragic experience. The gist was that Shizuka was abducted into the castle by the fire dragon and the fire dragon regarded her as a princess. Yu and Daisy wanted to send him away like this, but suddenly changed his mind. I know, young man. I will give you strength to take back your princess with your own hands. Nobita felt a ray of dawn, and then fell into a deep sleep. Yu and Daisy took off his armor, and put the magic device Dark Star Cloak on him. At the same time, he put the dark blade into the cloak, waiting for the master's call. The cloak soon disappeared, and it became invisible according to the master's command. Then he waved his hand, and the leopard, that had been watching from the side was caught by Yu and Daz's mental power. Since you want to kill me, it shouldn't be too much for me to take a little blood from you. As he spoke, his hand cut a hole in the Black Panther's body, and blood flowed out. Yu and Daisy smeared the blood on his body and mouth, then picked up Nobita and ran away. Chapter 307 Still have to save the day. Not long after, Yu and Daisy appeared in the world outside the woods. He looked dying, and Nobita on him had lost consciousness. Doraemon and Dekisugi hurried over to check on them, worried that something had happened to them. Yu and Daisy knelt on one knee, put Nobita down, and then pretended to be exhausted, and began to breathe heavily. When I found him, he was already like this, and then I was attacked by a monster, and had to return. Dekisugi hurriedly stopped him. Okay, don't talk, let me see your injuries. Hey? He touched a bloody spot on Yu and Daz's body with his hand, but found that even his clothes were not torn. What happened? He secretly made a face at him from below, and Zayashi realized that this guy was just pretending. It's okay, you've tried your best, go to the side and rest. He used to be a good student, but after following Yu and Daisy for a long time, he became a drama queen. Nobita was also released from his sleep spell, and slowly woke up. What the hell is going on? Where's Shizuka? Oh no, Shizuka has been kidnapped. Nobita covered his head and immediately remembered what happened over there. No, I have to save Shizuka. Nobita wanted to run into the forest while talking nonsense. Doraemon quickly stopped him. No, are you going to die now? Then he pointed at Yu and Daisy who was resting next to him. Even he is injured like this, you will definitely not be able to come out alive. Nobita turned around and gave Doraemon a bright smile. It's okay, I'm very strong now, even stronger than you and classmate. Deki and Doraemon next to him looked at him tacitly with an idiotic look. Nobita has already discovered his changes, and the magic left on him by Yu and Daisy has taken effect. The third level giant force technique and the second level wind technique have temporarily turned him into a Superman. But because his strength is not as good as Daisy, his body changes less. With Nobita's call, the armor transformed from the Dark Star Cloak also emerged. A brand new weapon of war was born without his knowledge. Nobita waved his sword. I met a very powerful person. He gave me the power to let me personally rescue the princess. Then he threw his cloak and turned around. Then I will leave, and I will bring the princess back. Just like that, Nobita walked into the Black Forest, ready to fight the dragon. Zayashi next to him silently glanced at Yu and Daisuke, and began to communicate with him with mental power. That guy was deceived by you, right? And you gave him such cool equipment. Oh, yes, I can save some energy. How harmonious. Doraemon quickly took out the spy satellite, and began to observe Nobita. So, the originally thrilling battle turned into Nobita's live broadcast of slaying the dragon. They can see from the screen that Nobita was tripped by a stone not long after he walked into the forest. Zayashi couldn't bear to look at this beautiful picture and turned his head to one side. Are you sure he has the ability to slay the dragon? And as he also covered his eyes, I believed him at first, but now I don't believe him anymore. Even Doraemon closed his eyes to show that he couldn't stand it anymore. Nobita is such a loser. He can fall flat on his face even with such good equipment. At this time, Nobita had no idea that his embarrassing moments had been seen by people outside, and he was still on his way to rescue the princess. He quickly got up from the ground, looked towards the castle and shouted, Shizuka, don't worry, I'll be here to save you soon. And as he took out a bag of melon seeds from somewhere, old manling, do you think Nobita has a chance of winning against the magic dragon now? The old man deduced the probability of winning or losing this battle based on the right time, place, and people. His strength has been forcibly increased by about 15 times by you, and his speed is 8 times the original. It seems that he is barely okay, but even a larval magic dragon is much stronger than him, so the only thing he can surpass the magic dragon is weapons and armor. According to my calculations, his chance of winning is only about 20%. Gian and as he nodded, but gave up the intention of letting Nobita be the savior. By the way, old man, can the blood of the demon dragon be used on Zayashi? His body is too weak. I know what you want to do, but I advise you to give up this idea. If you want to experience the dragon bloodbath, your body must have enough basic strength. Otherwise, if your body can't withstand the backlash of the dragon blood, if you are lucky, you will become a half dragon. If you are unlucky, your blood vessels will burst and die. Yu and Daisy had to give up this idea and concentrate on watching the cartoon of the brave man saving the princess. Nobita cut through the thorns and easily defeated many black panthers and giant bears with external forces and came to the flamed castle. At this time, Shizuka stood at the window of the castle and asked Nobita below for help. "Nobita, please save me. I don't want to stay here. Save me quickly. Ah, the demon dragon is coming." Nobita immediately felt his endless fighting spirit, picked up the shield and sword and went forward. He rushed all the way to the gate, and Nobita used his shield to knock open the castle gate and walked in. "You evil dragon, I will come to punish you today." A black dragon from the west came to the hall, and its footsteps made the earth tremble. "Human, do you want to save the princess? I don't think you have the ability to do so." The dragon looked at Nobita with contempt. This guy was too weak. "You will understand, my will is not inferior to yours." As he spoke, a dark golden helmet appeared on Nobita's head, and he took a combat posture to prepare for the enemy. Shizuka saw Nobita's state, and her eyes were full of stars. I didn't expect that Nobita would be so handsome when he was serious. Shizuka looked at Nobita nervously, waiting for the result of this battle. And as he saw all this from the monitor, and curled his lips in dissatisfaction. It was obviously me who gave him the equipment, but he was more handsome than me. It's too much. Zayashi and Doraemon looked at the screen nervously. They had never seen Nobita so serious, so they were eager to know the result of this battle. However, Nobita was soon slapped to the ground by the claws of the dragon. Although the external armor made him immune to the scratches of the claws, the vibration of the blow would still be transmitted to him in a small part. Nobita used the dark blade to support the ground, barely stood up, and looked at the dragon again. "Go to hell." Nobita jumped high, trying to cut off the head of the dragon, but the dragon just flapped its wings and knocked Nobita away. And as he knew that Nobita probably had no chance of winning, so he had to move his shoulders and walk into the forest. It seemed that he had to go to the rescue. "Hey, you and classmate, your injury is not healed yet. Are you going to show off?" Doraemon hurriedly called him. "Have you forgotten how serious your injury was just now?" And as he looked back at Doraemon, "Don't worry, I won't lose. I'm betting on the name of Hokage." Zayashi and the blue fat man were both stunned. What name of Hokage? But when they were stunned, I had already walked into the Black Forest. Chapter 308 Rescue Success. Nobita was beaten to the ground again and again by the dragon, but he did not give up. No matter how badly he was beaten, he would stand up again and pounce on the dragon with all his strength. Because if he lost, then no one could save Shizuka. He would never give his lover to others. Shizuka watched Nobita's miserable state and felt very sad. "Enough, Nobita. You have done enough. Go back. Don't make any more meaningless attempts." Shizuka shouted her heart to Nobita lying on the ground. She also didn't want Nobita to get hurt. "Go back. Even if I die here, I don't want to implicate you." Nobita climbed up with difficulty. His eyes were very firm. "No, I came here today just for you. I will never leave until I achieve my goal." When the dragon knocked Nobita down again, he finally lost his patience with this ant. "Since you are stubborn, then I will send you to death." The lines on the dragon's body gradually lit up. The red light spread from the belly to the throat. Finally, the dragon opened its mouth and spit out flames, and the crimson dragon breath ruthlessly washed over Nobita's body. Nobita desperately held the shield in front of him and used his cloak to block the dragon's breath with all his strength. And and as he finally entered the castle and began to quietly approach Shizuka's position. When the dragon's breath dissipated, the ground was melted by the dragon's breath, and only the area behind Nobita was intact. "See, this is the power of our dragon clan." The dragon fell to the ground and looked at Nobita below with mockery. At this moment, Yu and Dazi suddenly ran to Nobita with Shizuka in his arms and stuffed Shizuka into Nobita's hands. Go. While he can't fly. Everyone was stunned for a moment because they didn't see where Yu and Dazi came out. But he had already put Shizuka on Nobita and he had already won half the battle. Nobita threw down the dark blade, picked up Shizuka, and ran towards the gate, and Yu and Dazi followed closely behind. The dragon took off quickly because its running speed on the ground was really not flattering. But it was too late. Nobita had already run out of the hole with Shizuka in his arms. Nobita looked behind him happily. Great. Yu and San, we are now. Yu and San. At this time, Nobita and Shizuka realized that Yu and Dazi did not run out of the hole with them. Sorry, there must be someone here to cover us. Otherwise we can't get out of this forest. Yu and Dazi began to close the door that Nobita had knocked open and kicked Nobita away at the same time. Let's go. The princess is destined to be with the prince. This is her destiny. The door slowly closed under his power and Yu and Dazi gradually became smaller in the eyes of everyone. And I'm just a knight guarding the princess until she meets her prince. That's all. The moment Yu and Dazi finished speaking, the castle door also closed. Now Nobita no longer had the strength to knock the door open. He succeeded and failed. Doraemon outside was already crying. What a touching relationship this is. I suddenly feel that Nobita is not worthy of Princess Shizuka. Zyadishin's mouth twitched. He couldn't tell whether Yu and Dazi was acting or really ready to die. To be on the safe side, Demishin was also ready to go into the forest. I'd better go and take a look. If something happens, I can still save him. Doraemon quickly stretched out his hand to stop him. Hey, wait. It's dangerous for you to do this. Zyadishin rushed into the black forest without hesitation, regardless of Doraemon's obstruction. No, that's not right. It's not a moment of despair yet. We still have hope. Nobita, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly thought that, as long as the can was turned off, he would be saved. Shizuka, come with me to find the jungle can. As long as it is turned off, Yu and classmate can still be saved. Shizuka got off Nobita's body, and the two began to search in the jungle, trying to find the out-of-control can. The roar of the dragon was heard in the castle, and the crows nearby were disturbed, and flew away from the forest. Doraemon's spy satellite was also destroyed by the dragon's roar, so there was no way to know what was happening in the forest. Zyadishin quickly came to the gate of the castle and pushed it open with his mental power. The scene he saw shocked him, and he stayed there for a long time before he reacted. Dazi, you have solved this dragon so quickly? At this time, Yu and Dazi was covered in blood, and one hand was still stroking the dark blade, listening to its sword chant. He nodded. Yes, it's just a juvenile dragon. It's not that difficult to solve it. At this time, he had pierced the heart of the dragon with a sword blade and obtained the heart blood. The essence of the blood was all poured on Yu and Dazi, and his body was greedily absorbing the power of the dragon blood. In fact, if you drink the dragon's heart blood directly, the benefits will be greater. But there will also be higher risks. He may grow scales on his body and become a half-dragon man. He didn't want to take the risk, so he chose a more peaceful way. Dekisugi also breathed a sigh of relief. You acted like you were about to part with your life and death just now, which made me a little worried about you. Yu and Dazi put away the dark blade and knocked on his head. That's why you don't have confidence in me. It's been so long, and you still don't believe in me? He opened Dazi's hand. Don't you have no confidence in me? You often go out without me. Just when they were arguing, Nobita found the jungle can, stretched out his hand, and turned the dial. It's you who hurt me so badly, Yu and classmate. Nobita turned off the can, and the forest and the body of the dragon were put back into the can. The dragon blood in Yu and Dazi's body was almost absorbed, and he didn't look injured from the outside. But the leopard blood from before was still there, so it was still a little scary. Nobita and the others came over to check on him immediately, and they were relieved to see that Dazi was fine. So what happened? Classmate Yu, how come you are not hurt at all? Yu and Dazi folded his arms and said to everyone what he had prepared long ago. I was dodging the dragon's attack just now, so it didn't hurt me. But luckily you came in time, otherwise I would be in danger. Everyone believed his lies, and after confirming once again that Yu and Daisy was not injured, they packed up their things and went back to their homes. After returning home, the first thing Yu and Daisy did was to find a place to practice physical skills to strengthen his body. He had absorbed such a huge amount of power just now, so he had to rely on exercise to speed up digestion. Otherwise, part of the energy accumulated in his body would be lost, and then his loss would be great. By the time of dinner in the evening, Yu and Daisy had almost absorbed the dragon blood energy in his body. He clenched his fists with satisfaction and felt the surge of power. My strength has increased by a bull's strength. This time it is really a great harvest. After dinner, Yu and Daisy frowned and put down his chopsticks because he found that these things were no longer enough to satisfy his hunger. The old man sensed Yu and Daisy's situation and began to nag in his ear. Now that your physical strength has increased, these mundane foods will naturally be difficult to satisfy you. In fact, you should have eaten meat that is rich in strength a long time ago. These grains contain too many impurities and are not suitable for you to eat. Yu and Daisy also sighed. I want to eat those things too, but where can I find them? They both sighed at the same time. What a trouble for foodies. Chapter 309 Playing Tennis. The next morning, Yu and Daisy looked at today's calendar and sighed. It's already the 24th, and there's only 1 week left before school starts. Ziadishan saw this and smiled and reminded him, no, we only have 5 days left before we have to go to school. Yu and Daisy turned his head in surprise. What did you say? Why are there 2 days less in the vacation? That's because we have to clean up this semester to welcome the new year. As the class monitor, I have to go to school 2 days in advance. He pointed to the last 2 days of this month and explained this to Yu and Daisy. Daisy folded his hands and asked back, that's the class monitor's business. What does it have to do with me? Yu and Daisy, because I will ask you for help at that time. You will definitely not refuse, right? Demishan still looked at Yu and Daisy with a smile, and Yu and Daisy stared at him unwillingly. After a stalemate for a while, he still lost. Okay, I know. I will go to help when the time comes. Just as they were chatting, someone suddenly called. Chumushin went down to the corridor and answered the phone. Hello, this is Chumushin's house. What can I do for you? Chumushin, Yuyun, I want to invite you to come over this afternoon to look at some things. Do you have time? Ziofu's boastful voice came from the other side, mixed with a little smile. Yu and Daisy thought that he was going to show off his royal treasure again and immediately lost interest. However, Chumushin agreed. Sure, of course. What time in the afternoon? I will be there on time. Ziofu on the other side expected that they would agree, and after laughing a few times, he started to talk about business. See you at my house at 2 o'clock this afternoon. By the way, my cousin will come too. Yu and Daisy suddenly became interested again. After all, he was very curious about Ziofu's mysterious family. These people are all talented and have achieved something in a certain field. Such a prosperous family is inseparable from their education. So Yu and Daisy is also full of interest in the cousin he mentioned. He snatched the phone. Is your cousin coming? What surprise will he bring us this time? Is it another newly bought sports car? It's not that cousin coming this time. Ziofu smiled and waved his hand. He is the captain of the university tennis team. He won the gold medal in the last competition. Ziofu introduced his cousin enthusiastically, but Yu and Daisy yawned without interest. It turned out to be this kind of cousin. He thought he was a photographer or a successful person. After introducing a lot of things, he finally hung up the phone. Yu and Daisy also put down the phone board. Well, it seems that today is another boring afternoon. Ziadishan didn't think so. Don't say that. At least they are willing to invite us. Why not go over and take a look? Yu and Daisy stretched his back to him. Don't worry, I didn't say I wouldn't go. Just kill time. After making a casual lunch, they came to Ziofu's house. At this time, their home has replaced new sofas, TVs and other furniture, and has also updated murals and other things. After entering, he introduced how expensive his sofas were as usual, and asked them to be careful. Nobita, Fat Tiger, and Shizuka had also taken their seats, and now there were only the two of them left. Deiji and Zayashi found a place to sit down, waiting for Sunia to show them something. He took out a stack of things from his envelope and put them in their hands. These are the photos I took when I went skiing a few days ago. They were finally developed. Everyone, take a look. This is a top-notch ski resort. After Yu and Deiji picked it up, he just pretended to look at it for a few seconds, then stood up and prepared to maintain his persona. Is this the only thing? It really wasted my time to make a trip. After saying that, he turned and left. Zayashi hurriedly caught up with Yu and Deiji to prevent him from suddenly going berserk. In fact, Yu and Deiji was not very angry, but he still had to do this to maintain his persona. After Yu and Dazi left, Nobita immediately stood up and accused Sunia. Really, how could you show off your skiing in front of Yuan? Sunia looked at Nobita, then at Yu and Dazi who had already left, with a puzzled look on his face. Nobita, what's going on? Yuan, do you know that the reason why Yuan was adopted by Dekisugi's parents is because he lost his parents while skiing? The people present finally understood why Yu and Dazi was here, and they all blamed Sunia. Sunia was also helpless at this time. How could he know that Yu and Dazi had such a past? So everyone ran out together, and when they saw that Yu and Dazi had not left yet, they quickly carried Sunia over. On this matter, they were still very united. Ziofu lowered his head and apologized to him. I'm so sorry, I don't understand your situation, so I'm sorry, please forgive me, woo woo. Before he finished speaking, he hugged Yu and Dazi and started crying, which made Yu and Dazi feel helpless. I didn't cry. Why are you crying? Okay, stop crying. When can you change your get away, don't wipe your snot on me. Yu and Dazi was frightened and pushed Ziofu away quickly to avoid his clothes being dirty by him. In the end, he returned to Ziofu's home and forgave him. Ziofu put away the photos to prevent him from being sad when seeing these things. Then Ziofu looked at the wall clock and said, my cousin will be at my house at 2:30. Everyone wait a little longer. Anyway, Ziofu was bored, so he simply walked aside and turned on the latest TV and started a new round of showing off. But this time he learned a lesson and shortened the time of his showing off to avoid being disgusted. The latest cartoon, Cosmic Superman, is now on the air and is about to end. Not long after, a sunny and handsome man knocked on Ziofu's door. Ziofu immediately ran over to open the door for him excitedly. Cousin, thank you for taking the time to teach us how to play tennis. This cousin is not bad looking. If he didn't have that pointed mouth, he would be perfect. Everyone basically stared at the cousin's mouth. The characteristics of this family were too obvious. The cousin didn't know what they were thinking and greeted everyone enthusiastically. Ha, what a group of energetic children. Come with me, I will teach you some tennis skills today. Yes. Under his leadership, everyone came to a nearby tennis court and took out a few new tennis rackets. Is there any child willing to come up and try tennis? I will teach you well. The cousin looked around and no one dared to come forward because everyone was a little nervous. So Ziofu was the first to go up, picked up the racket, and walked in front of his cousin. It's Ziofu, then you can set a good example for your friends. The cousin and Ziofu stood on both sides of the tennis court, and the cousin served first. He threw the tennis ball high up, waited for the best point to hit the ball, and swung the racket suddenly. The tennis ball drew a beautiful arc and fell to the court where Sunia was, and then the tennis ball elegantly passed over Sunia's head. Because of his height, Sunia did not catch the ball. Sunia is 135 cm tall. But he did not get discouraged, but served the ball like his cousin. The two of them played back and forth like this, and everyone was very comfortable watching from the side, until Sunia left the court due to physical reasons. Chapter 310 Training Racket. After Sunia was exhausted, Fat Tiger took over, and then hit the tennis ball far away with a powerful drive. Fat Tiger, it's good to be energetic, but be careful about your strength. Go pick up the ball. Fat Tiger apologized to his cousin with a smile, and then ran to pick up the ball. This matter was originally his fault, so there was nothing wrong with letting him pick up the ball. After Fat Tiger was tired, it was Nobita's turn to play. He imitated the movements of the previous few people and got into position, then prepared to receive the ball. The cousin sighed. This posture was obviously amateurish. Then he made a regular serve, and with such a big racket, Nobita could still make the tennis ball miss the racket. Nobita didn't catch any of the tennis balls in a row. His face turned red. Nobita, you really don't have any talent in this area, so forget it. Sunia mocked Nobita as much as he could, making Nobita even more embarrassed. Zyadishin walked over to stop him. Don't say that. He may just not have grasped the key points. Let him try again. It will definitely get better. After hearing this, Nobita took the initiative to give up this opportunity and handed the racket to Dekisugi. I really don't have the talent in this area. If it were you, I believe you would succeed. After that, he hurried home to ask Doraemon for help. Since there are better ways to be lazy, why do you have to work hard yourself? After Zyadishin got the racket, he stood where Nobita was just now, facing Sunia's cousin, and took the starting position. The cousin saw that Dekisugi was doing it in a very good manner, and he immediately became interested. Little boy, where did you learn tennis? I think you seem to have some basic skills. Zyadishin shook his head and denied his statement. I haven't learned this. I just watched your movements for a while. Hahaha, that's really amazing. I'm very interested in you. Now come to catch the ball. The cousin immediately served the ball and hit it to where Zyadishin was. Dekisugi hit the ball back accurately according to the posture he just learned. The cousin was immediately happier and gradually began to take it seriously. And Iki was also brought into the state by him. His eyes became more focused. The tennis ball flew between them for a long time, but in the end, Diki suffered from his age and his physical strength could not support it. He was broken through the defense circle without paying attention, and failed to receive the ball. Yes, you are the most talented young people I have ever seen. The cousin also wiped the sweat from his forehead, and motioned Diki to go down to rest. Diki walked to the rest area next to him, and handed the racket to Yu and Dazuki. After he came on the court, he also made a not very standard posture, and prepared to receive the ball. He was very happy to see two young people with potential in a row, and once again threw himself into the battlefield with full energy. But he didn't know that this time he chose the wrong target to train. The cousin had just hit the first ball, and after Yu and Dazuki calculated the landing point, he pulled the ball back with a little force. But because he had added a lot of strength yesterday, Yu and Dazuki had not had time to adapt, so he made a mistake. The tennis ball brushed past the cousin's ear, and he was still in a state of confusion. What happened? How did the ball pass through? He didn't expect that the child's strength was so great, and the ball was so fast, that he couldn't react. Just like that, the cousin lost his first point inexplicably. What happened just now? Why didn't I see the ball clearly? Although he was confused, he didn't hesitate too much, and immediately turned around to pick up the ball. Fat Tiger picked up the ball before, because Fat Tiger's ball went out of bounds, and the failure points were counted on Fat Tiger's head. But Yu and Dazuki's ball did not go out of bounds, so he was considered a failure. According to the unwritten rules, the loser should pick up the ball in this case. After a while, the cousin came back with a tennis ball. It seems that I have to be more serious, and don't lose to him inexplicably. Just when the two of them were about to start playing again, Nobita came back by himself with a tennis racket. Hey everyone, let's play tennis again now. Sunia's cousin immediately agreed. He didn't want to face Yu and Dazuki now. If he were an opponent, he would be happy to play against this child. But the problem is here, this guy is just a child. Moreover, in the current situation, there is no benefit for him to win. But in front of so many people, it would be very embarrassing if he lost. Yu and Dazuki also knew that there was something wrong with his strength, and he also nodded in agreement with this proposal. The two sides changed players, and Nobita and Fat Tiger once again picked up the tennis racket to prepare for the game. This time, Nobita handed the tennis ball to Fat Tiger and asked Fat Tiger to serve first. Fat Tiger was not polite either. Since Nobita came to the door himself, he would not miss the opportunity to make him kneel on the ground and bow his head to admit defeat. Although there is no benefit in winning, it is refreshing. 3 minutes later, Fat Tiger knelt on the ground weakly and bowed his head to Nobita. I lost. Fat Tiger didn't catch any of the 3 balls just now. And this time, Ziofu's cousin couldn't sit still because he saw a master this time. Judging from the few serves just now, Nobita's movements were very standard, and he didn't look like an amateur player with terrifying strength like Yu and Azuki. Now he didn't care about the problem of face, and he must learn from the other party. So he went over to replace Fat Tiger, and went on the court himself. Seeing that the person who came was a master, Nobita turned around and quietly raised the training level of the tennis racket to level 3. The racket in his hand was a prop he asked Doraemon for, not a real racket. Moreover, this thing is a prop for future training, and you can choose the difficulty of this training according to your own strength, and the highest level is 3. The person who serves the ball is still not Nobita, because he can't serve, so he naturally won't take this job. After the cousin serves, the tennis racket automatically tracks the tennis ball and hits it back. And all Nobita has to do is hold the tennis racket tightly. The two kept running on the court, adjusting their positions and the angles of hitting the ball. The few laymen watching from the side were dazzled and couldn't help but applaud. Although Sunia's cousin spent a long time, he still had enough physical strength due to the huge amount of training and did not show any signs of fatigue. But Nobita couldn't hold on, because the balls hit by his cousin were also very tricky, and he was forced to keep running after the racket, which consumed a lot of physical strength. Stop hitting me. Nobita finally wailed. I can't hold on any longer. As soon as he finished speaking, the racket took Nobita flying up, and then quickly caught the next ball. What? Is playing tennis so powerful now? It can even fly. And as he looked at Nobita, who had been exposed, expressionlessly, waiting for him to make a fool of himself. Sure enough, Nobita soon lost his grip on the racket, and was thrown out by the tennis racket. Everyone saw the tennis racket that could hit the ball automatically, and they immediately understood everything. Fat Tiger walked towards Nobita with his fist clenched, with a cruel sneer on his face. I said, how could Nobita suddenly become so powerful? So this is it. Nobita moved back a few times. I'm sorry, please let me go. I've learned my lesson. Fat Tiger didn't care whether Nobita was pitiful or not, and waved his fist at Nobita, who had no intention of resisting. You dared to laugh at me just now. You are so brave. After he was beaten up by a bunch of people, he was thrown aside and ignored. Dazuki and Zyashin didn't fight, but they didn't go up to persuade them either. This time he asked for it. Who can he blame? Seeing the show come to an end, everyone said hello to the cousin, who was still struggling with the training racket. It was almost time to go home. Back in the house, Yu and Dazuki said hello to Chumashin and left. Yesterday, because of the magic dragon, he did not advance through the engraving. Now he is back to the top of the cloud, sitting cross-legged, immersing his consciousness in the sea of knowledge. He guided the magic power to draw the talisman and the pattern of rules, and his strength increased again. After completing the task, Yu and Dazuki returned to the room. Now Yu and Dazuki's strength is truly comparable to the three-headed earth-breaking bull, which can be said to be a small achievement. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311, Cherry Blossoms and Chrysanthemums. The next day, they received a call from Izanagi and his son, Brother Gian. Brother Izuki, are you interested in seeing the cherry blossoms? They asked each other for their opinions and agreed. Of course, we don't have anything to do now anyway. When are we going? We'll go tomorrow. The location is Gaojing Mountain. We'll see you there. And as he put down the phone and went to pack up with Zyashin. He was almost bored to death these 2 days. Apart from teaching Nobita a lesson, he had nothing to do. On the 26th, the two of them set off on time and took the bus to their destination, Gaojing Mountain. There were quite a lot of people on the bus at this time, because there were also many people who wanted to see the cherry blossoms. But what they didn't expect was that they actually met two acquaintances again. Chuncheng, Daoshi, are you going to Gaojing Mountain to see the cherry blossoms too? And as he greeted the two people with some surprise, the two people were still wearing clean school uniforms. They sat next to them and answered them with a smile. Yes, we agreed to go to see the cherry blossoms together today. I didn't expect to meet you. Cheng handed over two ancient books. It's boring on the road. I'll lend you this book. These books are very old, but they are well preserved, without any creases on them. It can be seen that the other party is very careful to keep these things. Gian and Azzy did not refuse, and took them to kill time. What kind of books are these? They look a bit old. These books are all books that record some ancient legends, so they have been preserved for a long time. Cheng also opened the book in his hand and read with them. Gian and Azzy flipped through the legends of Japan, most of which recorded ghosts. Among them, the story of the rain girl and a 100-eyed monster that he met last time was also recorded in this book. In fact, Gian and Azzy was not interested in them. They were just opponents that could be solved with a cucumber. But the stories in them were quite interesting, and he gradually became fascinated. Soon, Yu and Azzy flipped to the bottom of the book and saw something that interested him. There is a treasure buried under the big tree on Huanteng Mountain. Yu and Azzy nudged Xiaoshan with his elbow. If I remember correctly, Huanteng Mountain seems to be the former name of Gaojing Mountain, right? Xiaoshan nodded. Yes, Gaojing Mountain was renamed 64 years ago. It was called Huanteng Mountain before, because during those years, the Japanese government promoted environmental governance, so all the dead vines on Huanteng Mountain were cleared, and then many trees were transplanted there. Later, Huanteng Mountain had become very beautiful, and everyone felt that it was not appropriate to call it Huanteng Mountain, so it was renamed Gaojing Mountain. Yu and Azzy looked at the so-called Gaojing Mountain and began to think about what the tree might be. Since there was no deliberate indication of where the tree was, it meant that there must be a sign there. He asked again, Yinkei, is there anything on Gaojing Mountain that existed a long time ago? Chumushin put his hand on his chin and began to search for information in his mind. If you say so, it seems that there is indeed something. That is the dry well that was dug out at an unknown time. At this point, he looked at Yu and Azzy. Why do you suddenly ask this? Is there anything? Azzy quietly handed him the book in his hand and asked him to look at the news. Soon he confirmed, then it may be near the dry well. After all, Gaojing Mountain was named Gaojing Mountain because of it. Now they are almost reaching their destination, and Yu and Azzy returned the book to Cheng. After the car stopped, the four of them got out of the car together. Yu and Azzy and Chumushin were not in a hurry to leave. After all, they met acquaintances, and it would be nice to enjoy the flowers with these two people. Cheng and Aoshi looked at them. Why did you stop? Is there anything else that needs to be dealt with now? Yu and Azzy nodded. Yes, we have made an appointment with other people, and are waiting for them. Just as they were talking, the two heard a familiar voice coming from nearby. Have you seen these two people? We are looking for them now. A middle-aged uncle was holding a messy painting and looking for the people in the painting. The passerby who was asked looked at the painting helplessly. You painted like this, even Jesus wouldn't recognize you. The uncle immediately asked. It's a violent man who looks like a child. He is very dangerous now. The little boy next to him also interrupted. That's right, they are very excessive. If you don't pay attention, they will overturn your house. Just when the passerby was asked impatiently, a small hand suddenly stretched out from the side and took the painting away. Let me see who this so-called violent man is. Oh, his name is written on it. Yu and Azzy looked at the ugly Japanese characters, which roughly meant Yu and Azzy and Dekisugi. The two of them stared at Lee Zinai with dead fish eyes. Cheng and Aoshi covered their mouths and laughed quietly behind them. It was really no problem to say that Yu and Azzy was a violent man. A few minutes later, Yu and Azzy dragged two things and walked in front of Cheng and Aoshi. Now they couldn't laugh anymore because they were worried that Azzy would beat them up too. Okay, everyone is here for the trip to Mount Take this time. Let's go now. Azzy clapped his hands, called up the two people on the ground, and then followed the crowd to enjoy the cherry blossoms. Yu and Azzy looked at so many people and frowned immediately. There are too many people, right? How can I carry out my treasure hunt now? He thought silently in his heart that he needed to find a way to drive these people away. The 6 people sat together and took out their own lunch boxes. The meals for the two of them were prepared by Xiaoshan, and Imushan prepared his favorite sushi. The two Chinese people cooked some Chinese food, which smelled particularly fragrant. Chuncheng's food was dumplings as expected, and Aoshi's was the loving dish prepared by his mother for him. Everyone ate while enjoying the cherry blossoms. It was March now, and the cherry blossoms were in full bloom. Lee Zhenyu looked at the cherry blossoms falling all over the sky. His eyes were confused by the beauty. It's so beautiful. It's worthy of being the national flower of Japan. Hearing him say this, the three pure Japanese people next to him suddenly laughed. Yu and Dazi looked puzzled, because he always thought that the national flower here was cherry blossom. No, the national flower of Japan should be chrysanthemum. Xiaoshan seriously popularized science for several Chinese people here. In our Japan, cherry blossoms represent separation, death and withering. This kind of flower language cannot be used as a national flower. You mistakenly think that this is the national flower, probably because Japan's cherry blossoms are more famous. Chuncheng also nodded. That's right. Legend has it that under every cherry tree, a dead soul is buried. This flower is not suitable as a national flower. After learning the truth of the matter, Yu and Dazi silently picked up the sushi and put it in his mouth. He didn't care what the national flower was. It was more important to eat and hunt for treasures. After everyone finished eating, Yu and Dazi looked up at the sky. Now, it's time to let those irrelevant people leave. Chapter 312 Forced Exit. Just when Yu and Dazi was thinking about how to let them leave, Xiaoshan took out a camera from his backpack and said to everyone, "Let's take a group photo. It's not easy to get together. Why don't we leave a little memory?" So they found a cherry tree and lined up together. This time, the 5 children took the group photo, and the uncle took pictures of them from a distance. "Stand still, Yu and Dazi. Smile. Come on, follow me, eggplant." As a flash of light passed, their smiles were forever printed on a roll of film. The uncle took the photos in the camera and looked at them. He was very satisfied. "Okay, remember to develop the photos for us when you go back." Xiaoshan took the camera, looked at the photos in it, and felt very good. Uncle's photography skills are okay, but why is your expression so weird? Does he? Yu and Dazi shrugged helplessly. "I can't help it. I don't know what expression to put in front of the camera." "Okay, the meal is almost over. Let's continue climbing the mountain." As Demoshin said, he put away the camera and led everyone to continue climbing the mountain. Walking on the mountain road, Yu and Dazi suddenly said, "Today's weather is really bad. It gives me a feeling that it is going to rain soon." After hearing what he said, the others looked at the sun in the sky and laughed. "Student Yu, please stop making trouble. There are no clouds in the sky now. How can it look like it is going to rain?" Yu and Dazi did not say anything to refute them, but directly used magic to activate the laws of the sky. A few minutes later, dark clouds covered the entire Gaojing mountain, and raindrops began to fall gradually. The uncle's father and son covered their heads. "Are you kidding me? It's really raining?" Chuncheng took out an umbrella from his bag and stood with Daoshi. Seeing that it was raining, the others began to resent that today's weather forecast was inaccurate. Then they left Gaojing Mountain in groups, and it soon became empty. Then Yu and Dazi frowned, because there were still 2 ordinary people who had not left. If it were other ordinary people, it would be fine, but these 2 people were going to follow them. Seeing this, Yu and Dazi sighed slightly. "I'm so sorry, Chuncheng. I have to inconvenience you for a while now." Just when Chuncheng wanted to ask them to leave, a cherry blossom silently crossed his calf. Suddenly, a cut was pulled on his leg, and blood slowly seeped out. "Chuncheng, what's wrong with you? Why is your leg injured?" The sword servant next to him noticed his leg and quickly took out the potion and bandage to treat his wound. The father and son of the Li family looked at Chuncheng's injury. Both of them were puzzled. Nothing happened just now. Why did he suddenly get injured? Xiaoshan noticed the surging energy just now and cast a puzzled look at Yu and Dazi. "Did you do it?" Yu and Dazi nodded. "It's okay. I just want these 2 ordinary people not to act with us for the time being." Because this time the treasure was left by the legendary Japanese king of 100 ghosts, Shuten Daoji. At that time, he was very worried that he would encounter some ghosts and was afraid that he would not be able to protect their safety. So now he can only let them rest for a while and compensate them when they find the treasure. so Yu and Dazi also went over to comfort him. Are you okay? Can you walk now? Chuncheng stood up, tried to move his legs, and nodded. No problem, I can still walk. Yu and Dazi, can't you let me save some worry? Isn't it better for all of us to say that you can't walk? Chuncheng stood up with the help of the sword servant and prepared to go to the top of the mountain with everyone to see the scenery. So Yu and Dazi could only let them continue to follow for the time being, but for the sake of his plan, he would never let these two people follow him because the cemetery was too unsafe. He released a little mental power, found a stone, and put it on the road, and then said to Chuncheng, if you can't walk, don't force yourself, wait here for us to come back. Chuncheng smiled. It's okay, I used to do this often when I played football. Before he finished speaking, he was tripped by a stone. Just now, because he was talking to Yu and Dazi and didn't look at the road. This time he really sprained his ankle. Chuncheng covered his feet and sat on the ground helplessly. I'm so sorry, I've caused you trouble again. You should go first and don't worry about me. Xiaoshan knew that it was the work of that bastard Yu and Dazi, so he glared at him fiercely. But Yu and Dazi was not in a hurry to leave because there was still one person who had not been dealt with. How about this, Uncle Lee? You stay here to take care of them, and we will go up to take a group photo and then come down. How about that? The uncle pointed at himself. Hey, why do you want me to stay? You are more familiar with them. Wouldn't it be better for you to stay? Yu and as he moved his position slightly so that Chuncheng and the other two could not see his hands. Then he picked up a palm-sized stone, added the second level strange power, and crushed it into powder, because I think it's safer to have an adult. What do you think? The uncle wiped a cold sweat and stood silently beside Chuncheng. You are right. Seeing that they had reached a consensus, Chuncheng and Aoshi were relieved, and the three children went to the top of the mountain together. After Chuncheng and the others could no longer see us, Li Zinayu asked his doubts. Brother, why did you send them all away? Is there something wrong with you? Xiaoshan explained for him helplessly. Yes, because there might be Shuten Daoji's treasure here, so he left a few ordinary people here. When Li Zinayu heard that there was a treasure here, he immediately forgot about his father. Really? I've always wanted to go treasure hunting. Where is this treasure? Seeing that he was so greedy, Yu and Dazi knocked on his head. How should I know? Aren't you looking for it? Dazi and Xiaoshan joined forces to expand their detection range. Now, Demishan's detection range is no smaller than Yu and Dazi's. Although he has magic to assist in detection, Demishan's current mental power quality and quantity are stronger than his, so his detection range is naturally not worse than his. The two of them joined forces to cover an area of 700 meters and began to search for the dry well in this area. Not long after, Xiaoshan found the target near the top of a mountain. I found it. It's on that mountain, not far from us. Yu and Dazi nodded, then carried them both on his shoulders and began to move his hands and feet. Chumushin suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. What are you doing? Didn't I tell you not to carry me on your shoulders without my permission? It's to save time. After all, we have to cross the distance of a mountain. As soon as he finished speaking, the third level wind walking technique instantly possessed him, and his speed easily broke through the speed of sound. Chumushin and Li Zinayu screamed on his shoulders. This feeling was more exciting than riding a roller coaster. In just over 10 seconds, Yu and Dazi stood in front of the well and put them down. Li Zinayu was a little better, with a pale face and holding his stomach. But Chumushin, who was in a worse condition, couldn't bear it anymore and knelt on the ground and vomited. After waiting until he had almost finished vomiting, she stood up and yelled at him. Can't you consider my feelings? Yu and Dazi stretched out his little finger and picked his ear, which was buzzing from Chumushin's yelling. This is to save time. After all, the earlier we arrive, the earlier we can finish. There's really nothing we can do about you. After they both paused for a while, they began to observe the situation here carefully. Chapter 313. The dry well was still surrounded by dead vines. It was unknown how many years it had existed. Even the initial cleaning could not make the dead vines disappear. They were looking for the tree recorded in the book, but there were many old trees here, so it was difficult to determine it at the moment. Chumushin said as he searched, we can try to use mental power to directly detect the underground, which is less labor intensive. Hearing this, Yu and Dazzy shook his head. Forget it, I just tried it, and there is something in the land here that blocks the detection of mental power. Ah, really? Chumushin released his mental power and tried to penetrate into the land. But just as he said, there was a barrier here that blocked the detection of mental power. There is something strange in this area, and it is basically certain that there must be something underground. Although it is impossible to directly determine where the treasure is, knowing that there is a treasure here is also good news. But Zyashin did not give up the detection, but continued to release his mental power. After a few minutes, he retracted his power. I just confirmed that the scope of the ban is about 100 meters around this dry well. We can start looking for clues around this well. Yu and Dazzy also nodded. Let's find some trees with a relatively old age first, so that the possibility of finding treasures is greater. They split into 3 groups and began to search for the thicker trees here. Half an hour later, they all returned to their original positions dejectedly. Yu and Dazzy looked at the two of them. Are you all the same, without any harvest? They nodded. The trees here are basically not big, and there are no trees over 50 years old. According to historical records, Shuten Daoji was cut down by the General Minamoto no Reikao 1,000 years ago. After everyone was silent for a while, Zyashin once again put forward his opinion. Since we can't find a suitable tree now, how about looking at this well? Okay, after all, this is the only thing left from ancient times. They gathered at the well and looked down, but it was too dark inside the well, and they couldn't see anything. Let me try. Lee Zinayu took out a talisman from his pocket, lit it, and threw it down. With the help of the blue firelight, they could barely see the scene below. The wall of the well was very smooth, without the roughness of other dry wells. But the surface was full of cracks, which looked very scary. The depth of this dry well was very large, and the talisman had not reached the bottom for a long time. In the cracks of the stones around the wall, black vines could be seen faintly. And Yu and Dazzy also vaguely saw the strange lines on the stone wall, which was a kind of line he had never seen before, and it seemed that there was some magical power flowing in it. He shook his head and threw away the extra thoughts in his mind. Going down from here, it is very likely to encounter danger. What do you think? Lee Zinayu immediately said, since we are here, of course we have to go down and take a look. Chumushin hesitated. I think it's better to forget it. Why risk your life for a treasure that you don't know whether it exists or not? Yu and Dazzy closed his eyes and thought for a while and made a decision. Of course I have to go down and take a look. I won't die easily. After that, Yu and Dazzy jumped and took the lead in jumping down from the dry well. Then I'll go first. You should think about it for a while. Lee Zinayu saw Yu and Dazzy jump down and followed without hesitation. After a few seconds of ideological struggle, Chumushin followed the example of the two people in front of him and entered the well together. The first person to go down to the dry well was Yu and Dazzy, because he was the strongest. In order to ensure their safety, he had to be the first. After falling for nearly 10 seconds, Yu and Dazzy finally landed on the ground. With a loud bang, Yu and Dazzy's body hit the ground heavily, shattering the floor and splashing a lot of dust. Ahem. No one has been here for many years. There is so much dust, it's really terrible. After landing on the ground, Yu and Dazzy saw a piece of extinguished talisman paper that Lee Zinayu had just dropped. The surrounding area was full of thick yun energy, which made him sniff in dissatisfaction. Now his body is not afraid of these, but it is estimated that those two guys are a bit affected. Then Yu and Dazzy took out the wooden spirit staff, and a gust of wind blew, slowing down the speed of the two people's descent. Not long after, the two of them also landed, but the noise was not as loud. After they landed safely, Yu and Dazzy first confirmed whether anyone was injured. After both of them said that they were really fine, they began to discuss moving forward. Lee Zinayu picked up the talisman he had just dropped. Why did this thing go out? He fanned it twice vigorously, but nothing happened. Lee Zinayu shook his head helplessly. It's too dark here, and my talisman paper is not enough. There is no way to move forward. Leave the lighting problem to me. I remember I have magic that is specifically for this situation. Let me find it. He placed the magic stone of the wood spirit staff in front of him and chanted a spell to it. After a while, a cluster of green flames burned on the magic stone. Yu and Dazi raised the staff, and the pale green light finally allowed them to see the surrounding situation. The roads here are all made of bluestone, and there is a lot of black liquid on the wall that has not yet condensed. I don't know if it is blood or water. Brother, why is your flame green? It looks so creepy. Lee Zinayu felt uncomfortable when he saw Yu and Dazi's flame. Because this flame draws energy from the surroundings as fuel, the scene here condenses into yin fire, so naturally you will feel gloomy. Yu and Dazi simply explained to him the principle of this magic. The current cluster of flames uses yin ki as fuel, which is naturally incompatible with Lee Zinayu who practices spiritual power, so he has this feeling. This seems to be a corridor. We can only move forward now. What do you think? Yu and Dazi looked at the scene nearby. This place is more creepy than his yin fire. The two of them had no objection. After all, there is indeed only this way now. The corridor is not long, about 300 meters. Not long after, they came to a door. We are here. This is the end. There seemed to be some pattern on the door, but it was very scattered, and they could not see it for a while. Zyadishan saw a gap in the lower left corner, and then looked at the door, and knew how to open the door. Let me do it. This door is just to restore the disrupted pattern. Zyadishan walked forward, and began to move the stone slabs on the door. Isn't this the same as the Dark Temple last time? Yinke is really good at this. A few minutes later, Demishan had perfectly restored all the stone slabs. The pattern on this door is a handsome man who can't be distinguished between men and women. Around him, countless gold and silver treasures surround him, and from time to time beauties bow their heads to offer him good wine. And as he looked at the painting with disgust and jealousy, this should be the Shutendoji, right? He is really conceited. According to legend, Shutendoji is a demon monk who is so handsome that he can't be distinguished between men and women. In the end, for some reasons, he was killed by many people. But after his death, his resentment did not dissipate, and he eventually became the king of the 100 ghosts at that time. Until thousands of years later, this legend was placed in front of them again. Chapter 314. It's just a tomb robbery. Why is there such a big deal? Chumushin inserted the last stone slab on the ground into the gap in the middle, and the stone door was opened. This time, they should have come to the main room. A coffin made entirely of bluestone was placed in the center of the hall, surrounded by countless chains. On the surrounding walls, there were 4 stone doors of different sizes. The door they walked in was the smallest one. There should be gold and silver treasures here, right? I must take more back. Lee Zinayu said as he stepped into the center of the hall. When he stepped on the stone slab inside the door, the candle on the chain suddenly lit up. The bright light filled the entire hall, and the gloomy feeling disappeared immediately. Seeing the light filling the hall again, Yu and Dazi sighed slightly. This design is pretty good. What should we do now? Should we go directly inside the door to take a look, or lift his coffin lid? Lee Zinayu was still in an excited state, looking at the coffin in the middle and eager to try. Zyadishan felt that there was something strange inside, and didn't want to take unnecessary risks. Forget it, let's go directly behind the door to take a look. It's better to have less trouble than more. And as he was speechless, do you two have to sing a different tune? Can't you agree on the same thing? The two of them looked at each other, and said in unison, then you decide. Seeing that they were so united, and as he had to show his manliness and immediately stepped forward, and pushed open the lid of the sarcophagus. After opening the coffin, a green light flashed, and then he was stunned. The two of them ran over in a hurry. Are you okay? What's in it? There was a corpse in the sarcophagus, but judging from the appearance, it should not be the corpse of the evil monk. There was still hair on his head, and it was not as handsome as the legend said. Next to this corpse, there was a large amount of gold and jewelry buried, and he was shocked by these things just now, which led to the phenomenon of losing consciousness. Great, we've made it. If we take these things back and sell them, there'll be enough for us to live comfortably for several lifetimes. The three of them cheered and began to imagine their lives after they became rich. Yu and Dazi immediately came to his senses. Don't worry about that for now, just move the things here. The three of them immediately stuffed the things here into his cloak and soon emptied the coffin. Looking at the corpse in the middle, Yu and Dazi bowed and apologized to him and prepared to close the coffin. At this moment, Lee Zinayu suddenly saw that there was a faint green light emanating from the mouth of the corpse. So he reached his little hand in and took out the green bead. Seeing this, Yu Yuan as he slapped his hand. What are you doing? Tomb robbers don't move the body. This is the rule of the industry. Lee Zinayu stuck out his tongue. So what? It's just a corpse anyway. Then he carefully observed the bead in his hand, and his face quickly turned green. This is a soul suppressing bead, used to immobilize dead things like zombies or seal souls. Chumashin looked at the so-called soul suppressing bead and felt a chill. In other words, there is actually a zombie in that coffin? Then, there was a scream and a sound of hitting from the back. Ah! Help! They looked back and saw Yu Yuan Dazi pounding the coffin frantically. The stone coffin, which was half a meter thick, was completely broken in less than a second by Yu Yuan Dazi. As the stone coffin collapsed, he also hurriedly retreated to the back, covered his chest with his hands, and began to gasp. You don't know, the corpse suddenly opened his eyes just now, and almost scared me to death. Yu Yuan Dazi, who had just retreated, was still a little frightened. Chumashin pointed at the pile of debris. So, this is your reason for stealing things and demolishing other people's houses? So how is the corpse now? Is it dead? Oh no, it seems that he was dead. Lee Zinayu looked at the collapsed stone coffin and said with some concern. Yu Yuan Dazi looked at the black blood on his hands and recalled what happened just now. After seeing the corpse open its eyes, his first reaction was to add the second level strange power to himself, and then he used a set of demon clan physical skills, heavy rain. Then it seemed that he directly smashed the zombie's head. Don't worry, I should have killed it directly just now. But why is your face so green? Lee Zinayu put the bead back behind his back. You must have seen it wrong, but the light of this bead gave you an illusion. After he moved the soul-fixing bead away, both of them took 2 steps back. Lee Zinayu, I think you'd better look in the mirror, because your face is now greener, and even the roots of your hair are about to be dyed green. Lee Zinayu immediately reacted, and threw away the soul-suppressing bead in his hand. I know, this bead has been in its mouth for too long, and there is corpse poison. Then he immediately sat cross-legged, took out a few talisman papers, and placed them around himself to start removing the poison. Yu Yuan Dazi drew a little water element from the air, and wrapped the soul-suppressing bead. A few minutes later, the talisman paper turned green, and he finally returned to normal. The water wrapped around the soul-suppressing bead had also turned dark green, and it was not a good thing at first glance. The soul-suppressing bead was taken out, and now it had turned light green, giving people a very comfortable feeling. Lee Zinayu put away the bead. Give me this thing, and exchange it for half of my treasure. They nodded. Anyway, if this thing was given to Yu Yuan Dazi and Chumashin, they would not use it. By the way, who is buried in this huge sarcophagus? Xiaodishan looked at the pile of stones that I had broken, and the doubts in his heart were still not solved. Yu Yuan Dazi patted his shoulder. Don't worry about it. After all, he has been dead for so many years. Then they turned their eyes to the 3 rooms at the back, ready to continue this adventure. The 3 of them walked into the first room, which was full of jars. Yu Yuan Dazi used his mental power to detect it, and found that the jars were not gold, but some liquid. So he immediately accepted the things. There may be wine in it. You kids are not allowed to drink. The 2 of them snorted in disdain, but they did not stop Yu Yuan Dazi from accepting them. They came to the second room, which only had an ancient sword. It had been here for who knows how long, and even the scabbard was almost corroded. Dekisugi walked over and touched the scabbard, and the wooden shell turned into ash. But the blade was still cold and sharp, and it was obvious that it was a good sword. Xiaodishan took the knife and carefully observed the pattern on the handle. There is a word Gen on this knife. I know, it may be Daojikiri Yasutsuna. He immediately thought of the 5 famous swords that had long disappeared in the legend, and the identity of the corpse outside, and explained, this should be Minamoto no Reikou's sword, and the zombie outside is Minamoto no Reikou himself. Yu Yuan Dazi put the knife away first, and then walked to the 3rd room together. There was only a dark purple stone inside, emitting an uncomfortable light. Daichi recognized this thing immediately. It was exactly the same as what Shizuka had given him. In other words, this thing was actually a soul stone. Chapter 315, Distribution of Treasures. Yu and as he excitedly took the stone and looked at it carefully, then shook his head in disappointment. This soul stone looks quite advanced, but the soul power inside cannot be used by humans. The power inside has been polluted, and all the soul power carries negative emotions. If it is absorbed by someone, the dark side of that person will gradually become stronger. Negative emotions such as jealousy, greed, and hatred will emerge from the depths of the soul one by one, and eventually destroy that person. Although Emushan's soul is almost entirely kind, he has been here for a long time, and Emushan's soul has gradually developed a dark side, being angry. Of course, this does not mean that he has become bad, but he has just lost his perfect godhood. Even if his soul has not changed, Yu and Dazi will never let him absorb this soul stone. To be on the safe side, he will never let anyone absorb this soul stone before clearing the negative emotions of this stone. Wait, getting rid of the negative emotions inside. Isn't that what Shizuka is good at? He thought of the man who feeds on negative emotions, and this soul stone can be said to have a place to go. I'll take this stone with me, and this treasure hunt ends here. Seeing that no one had any objections, they left from where they came from. When the three of them saw the sun again, they were all greedily absorbing the fresh air from the outside world. It's better to be outside. It's cold and dark down there. It's really. Dazi, let me go. Xiaoshan was carried on his shoulders before he could finish his words. Li Zinayu, a passenger who took the Yu and Dazi Express with him, said, "This train is about to set sail. Please hold on to the handrails. Pay attention to your feet, and don't stick your head and hands out of the window." The expressions on their faces gradually became desperate, and they could only cover their faces helplessly. "Let me down. I want to get off. This is not a train to the kindergarten." Ignoring their struggles, Yu and Dazi soared to the extreme in an instant, and once again took more than 10 seconds to reach the top of the original mountain. Ugh. This time, the two couldn't help it, and vomited as soon as they got off the train. When they vomited out all the food they had eaten at noon today, they barely stood up. Yu and Dazi burned their vomit with a look of disgust, then took out a camera to take pictures. He set up the camera and said, "Come on, smile. We'll go back after we take the pictures." They had just finished vomiting, and both had bitter faces, and they couldn't smile at all. Yu and Dazi looked at them expressionlessly. "Hurry up. If you make me angry, I'll let you experience the luxury train package." After hearing Yu and Dazi's threats, they quickly squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. They pressed the shutter to take the picture, and they had completed their mission for today. When they returned to the bottom, the uncle was still there, but Chuncheng and Aoshi had disappeared. "Uncle, where are the two kids I asked you to look after? They must have been lost." He lay on the ground and yawned. They went to the nearby lake to read. Yu and Dazi pulled him up. "Stop talking nonsense. Lead the way. Otherwise I'll throw you down." He finally woke up from his sleepiness and bowed to him. "Taejin, please come this way." Dazi followed the direction he pointed to. After he left, the uncle whispered, "TSK, look at how proud you are, little Japanese. Hu." Yu and Dazi sneezed in front and couldn't help rubbing his nose. "I got a cold after being scolded. Who is scolding me behind my back?" They found the lake. Chuncheng and Aoshi were eating under a cherry tree. When they saw them coming, they put away their books and greeted them. "You're back. How was the scenery on the top of the mountain?" "The scenery is pretty good. We took some photos. By the way, here are some for you as a souvenir of this trip." Yu and Dazi took out 2 panjin from his bag and gave one to each of them. Although it is small, the market value of this thing is not low. Even if it is sold separately, it will cost hundreds of thousands of yen each. When they saw this thing, they just thought it was something worthless like brass and didn't take it seriously. "Really? Thank you so much." Chuncheng and Aoshi took one each and put it in their pockets and then prepared to go back with them. As soon as they walked into the tree just now, they heard some strange whispers. "Really? What is that little brat so proud of? Isn't it just relying on his greater strength?" Li Zinayu immediately felt something was wrong after hearing it and wanted to warn his father. But a hand covered his mouth and at the same time signaled that no one else should make a sound. In this way, Yu and Dazi quietly walked behind the uncle without the uncle knowing, wanting to see what this guy was still talking about. The uncle was still talking bad things to himself. Really, if he was my child, I would. If I was really your child, what would you do? The uncle said, as if it was a matter of course. Is there any need to say that? Put him on the bed and beat him up first. Lisa now covered his forehead in the back. This guy's really a fool. It seems that he will become an orphan today. The following scene was too violent. In order to maintain the green environment of the network, I will not describe it in detail. Dad, are you okay? Dad, please say something. Are you going to find my mother now? Lisa now hugged his father like this, saying some very sad words expressionlessly. At this time, the uncle could no longer be seen as a human being. A little man with a halo came out of his mouth, accompanied by a burst of hallelujah sound effects. It flew higher and higher in the air. Yu and as he looked at the little soul, grabbed him with grief, and stuffed him back into the uncle's body from his mouth. At this time, the uncle twitched on the ground for a few times, and finally woke up. He clapped his hands in satisfaction. Okay, let's stop the fast today. Then he moved his eyes to Lisa Nayu. When the treasure is exchanged for money, I will send your share to you. Lisa Nayu nodded, carried the uncle who was no longer in human form, and walked on the way home with everyone. After returning, Yu and Dazi first went to find Shizuka and asked him to deal with the soul stone. But Shizuka was not at home, and it was his mother who opened the door. Are you looking for Shizuka? I don't know where the child is, because he always comes back very late when he is on vacation. Then she sighed. I don't know if the child has gone astray. It's really worrying. It doesn't matter, your child has definitely not gone astray. I'll leave first. Take care of yourself. After saying goodbye to his mother, Yu and Dazuki, who had nothing to do, had to go home first. After arriving home, he first took out the Tanjikuri Yasunaga. Old man, what do you think of this knife? Is it worthy of your approval? Soul Devourer took a closer look. This thing can only be used for so-so purposes. Hey, aren't you Fang? I thought you would do your best to belittle it and then recast it into a sword. Soul Devourer, stop talking nonsense. Do you still want to give it to that kid? If you do, shut up. Chapter 316. Horcrux Recognition. Hearing what the old man said, Yu and Dazi was a little surprised. Oh, Aang can use this knife. Then he has to carry it all day long. Isn't it troublesome? Because Tanjiki Yasunaga cut off the head of a ghost, it means that he has some characteristics of a soul. I can make this knife a soul weapon. Just like me now, it resides in the soul. And this is an offensive soul weapon. From this point of view, it will be much better if this thing is used by Chumushin, who specializes in mental power, than by you. Yu and Dazi was still a little surprised. But aren't you a magic weapon? Why do you say you are a soul weapon again? Have you changed your career? Shut up. I'm a soul inheritance magic weapon created by the Demon King with all his efforts. It is specially made for the convenience of the Demon Clan to pass on. If you don't understand, don't talk nonsense. Yu and Dazi spread his hands helplessly. Okay, now let's talk about how to make it a soul weapon. Will it be troublesome? It's not that troublesome, but the process is a bit unacceptable. The old man whispered to him the method of the soul weapon recognizing its master. A few minutes later, Yu and Dazi walked in front of Zyashin with Tanjikuri Yasunaga. Seeing Dazi stopped in front of him, Zyashin put down the book in his hand. Dazi, what do you want to see me for? Yu and Dazi nodded, pulled him up, and then leaned close to his ear and whispered, Izuka Ise, I've had enough of you. I'm going to let you die here today. Zyashin's face was full of question marks. Did this guy take the wrong medicine today? He was about to say something when he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. He subconsciously lowered his head to look at his stomach, and a knife pierced his abdomen. And this murder weapon was the Tanjikuri Yasunaga that Yu and Dazi was holding now. Izuka took 2 steps back, looking at Yu and Dazi and the long knife in his abdomen in disbelief. With one hand covering his abdomen, he pointed at him with the other hand tremblingly. Why? Yu and Dazi stood there, smiled and took out the wooden stick. You guys only hinder me, and you want to steal my treasure. One less person, I can get more. Then he showed a crazy smile. I will deal with the father and son of the Lee family later, and I can take this treasure alone. Hearing Yu and Dazi say this, Chumashin sat on the ground weakly, and he still couldn't believe it. The knife was absorbing his mental power, and now he had no power to resist, so he could only close his eyes bitterly. I didn't expect that you would love money to this extent. I really misjudged you. After saying this, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen again, and he completely lost consciousness. Yu and Dazi threw away the stick in his hand, and then began to ask the soul-devouring monument about its current situation. Is what you are doing really effective? Why do I feel like you are trying to trick me? That's right. If you drink the blood of the master in despair, you can sign a contract with him. If you want to communicate with the Horcrux, you cannot feel the existence of the Horcrux without getting rid of the interference of your body. And after the Horcrux recognizes its master, it must also abandon the physical body. The effort of both is the same, so there is no problem. Yu and Dazi put away the dark blade. Is it so troublesome for a Horcrux to recognize its master? Magical weapons are much more comfortable to use. The soul-devouring monument agreed. Why do you think there are so few telekineticists? This is one of the reasons. But in fact, the Horcrux has many advantages. Not only can it use mental power to provide the master with all-round bonuses, but it can also grow with the master. After a pause, the soul-devouring monument continued. By the way, we will have to force him into a desperate situation again. Otherwise, I don't know how long it will take for him to be able to summon the Horcrux by himself. Not long after, the blade of Tanjiki Yasunaga broke into pieces bit by bit, and finally dissipated with the wind. The wound on Zyadishin's abdomen was still there, and Yu and Daisy used the rejuvenation technique to heal his wound. Looking at Zyadishin lying below, he sat aside, and waited quietly for Dekishin to wake up. When Dekishin regained consciousness, he opened his eyes with great effort. But he did not see the sunlight, but a dead silence and darkness. Where am I? Am I really dead again? He wandered aimlessly in the endless darkness, and this dark space seemed to have no end. Suddenly, a voice appeared in his ears. Do you desire power? The power that can make you revenge? Zyadishin gave up walking around, but stood there in silence for a long time. I desire power, but I don't want to take revenge on him. The voice heard Dekishin's answer, and felt a little surprised. But he killed you. Don't you want him to pay the price? I don't blame him. The reason why he is like this should be related to the last time I changed his lottery. Dekishin looked at the darkness in the distance, and answered his question seriously. If I hadn't changed his lottery ticket, he wouldn't have cared so much about the treasure, and he wouldn't have killed me. And I've always found it strange that he shouldn't have attacked me for this reason. The voice seemed a little interested. Do you really think so? Human nature is greedy. After getting money, they will only covet more money, instead of stopping there. Zyadishin nodded. I know, but I would rather believe that Yu and Dazi is not that kind of person. The voice was silent when he saw that Chumashin actually believed him so much. Then I congratulate you here. You didn't see the wrong person. Zyadishin saw a knife appear in the darkness and slowly floated towards him. Looking at the sharp blade, Chumashin didn't know what he should do now. What do you mean? Explain it to me clearly. The blade stopped in front of Chumashin, and a voice came from the blade. Catch me, you will know everything you want to know. Zyadishin looked at the knife in front of him, and didn't want to grab the murder weapon. But he felt a sense of familiarity with the knife, so he reached out and grabbed it. Suddenly, the blade emitted endless light, dispelling all the darkness here. My name isn't Gang. I will follow your footsteps, help you cut off the evil spirits, and dispel the darkness. Demishin woke up instantly, and sat up and gasped. What happened? Why did I dream of a knife? And, Dazi. Thinking of this, Demishin looked around, and found Dazi sitting on the bed, looking at him quietly. I really didn't expect that you would not die. But now it should be in time to finish it off. And as he also stood up slowly, and a dark sharp blade appeared in his hand. Zyadishin immediately woke up. Now was not the time to be surprised. He began to slowly retreat, and took this opportunity to quickly think of a countermeasure. Ask for help. No one can be my reinforcement, and he will definitely kill those ordinary people. Just as he hesitated, and as his sword swung at him, he quickly dodged the sword, and rolled to the side of the bookshelf. Then, he launched a mental attack, but it was cut in half by and Dazi. Seeing his attack was easily blocked, a few drops of sweat appeared on his face. Damn, the dark blade is too powerful. I have to find something to fight it. Just as he was talking to himself, Yu and Dazi attacked him again. Dekisu's mental power was simply unable to fight against this sharp blade, and he was soon forced into a desperate situation. Finally, in a corner, Yu and Dazi put the dark blade on his neck. What's wrong? Is this all your strength now? Chapter 317 Aerial Battle. Seeing that he didn't say anything, Yu and Dazi raised his dark blade and said, since you are still so weak, why not take this opportunity to die easily? After that, Yu and Dazi swung his sword, and the dark blade in his hand was about to fall on Demishan's head. Demishan raised his hand up, hoping to block the knife with his own hand. Although he knew that this was ineffective, he knew very well how sharp this black sword was. Just when Yu and Dazi was about to cut him, Demishan's desire to survive finally broke out. The soul weapon and gang in the depths of his soul finally woke up and appeared in his hand on his own. He subconsciously swung the knife and blocked the sword. Dang. The crisp collision sound resounded in the room. Xiaoshan looked at the knife in his hand and was stunned. The blade had turned pure white, and the length of the handle was just right for him to hold with both hands without feeling uncomfortable. The length was also partially adjusted according to his body, and holding it was like holding his own arm. Very good. We finally succeeded in awakening the Horcrux, and our mission is finally completed. Seeing that Dekisu succeeded in awakening the Horcrux in Desperation, the Soul Eater monument unloaded the burden in his heart and prepared to go back to sleep. But Yu and Dazi suddenly changed his mind and pinched Dekisu's neck with one hand. It seems that you have made progress during this period, but it seems that it is just so-so. Xiaoshan tried to use his mental power to push his hand away, but Yu and Dazi's power was too strong and exceeded his limit. The dark star cloak appeared on Yu and Dazi's body, and the darkness slowly enveloped the two of them. In less than a second, they appeared in the place where Yu and Dazi usually practiced swordsmanship, above the clouds 10,000 meters above the ground. Xiaoshan saw this guy coming here, and knew that he wanted to get serious. Because if he fought below, the destructive power would be too strong, and would disturb the nearby residents, which did not meet his behavioral standards for hiding his identity. There was no worry in the air. But Dekisu was now being pinched by Yu and Dazi's neck, and because he was no longer protected by Yu and Dazi's magic, he already felt difficulty breathing. Yu and Dazi looked at him with some amusement. It's so high here. If you accidentally fall down, will you die? After saying that, he let go of his hand and let Chumushin enter freefall. Xiaoshan immediately remembered the necklace he wore around his neck and immediately activated it with his mental power. A wind attributed magic surrounded him, allowing him to fly in the air. Then, he cast his eyes on Yu and Dazi. Yu and Jun, I don't blame you for what happened just now, but I won't let you hurt Lee Zinayu and the others. Yu and Dazi also put down the hood on his cloak, so that his eyes could directly face Chumushin, expressing his respect for his opponent. Of course I can promise you, as long as you have the strength. Xiaoshan controlled the necklace and flew straight towards him. I don't intend to persuade you with words. A platform made of mental power appeared, and Chumushin kicked hard, and the speed suddenly increased. It was the second move of the Kangyu sword technique, Eagle Strike the Sky. Although the speed is very fast, it is still too slow to escape from his sight. In a flash, Yu and Dazi swung his sword to block the knife that Chumushin stabbed. Yu and Dazi pressed his sword down hard, using what I taught you to kill me. Aren't you a little too naive? Chumushin knew that this attack failed and immediately kicked him, trying to distance them. But Yu and Dazi's movements were faster, and when his kick came, he reached out and grabbed him. Oh no, I'm caught. He immediately felt something was wrong. As someone who was with him day and night, he knew very well how powerful Yu and Dazi was. This guy's strength is always a mystery. When you think you have caught up with him, you will find that his strength is even greater, which is simply despairing. Yu and Dazi grabbed his foot, and then exerted a little force on his hand, and Chumushin's bones wailed faintly. Chumushin felt the pain, but clenched his teeth and said nothing. Yu and Dazi was a little surprised and said, strange, your body seems to be stronger than I thought. Is it because you got a new weapon? His mental power filled his whole body with the power of the Horcrux, providing a bonus for his body, which protected his bones from breaking. But even so, there was no way to resist his strange power. Seeing that it was almost done, Yu and Dazi picked up his feet and threw Zyadishan dozens of meters away. After finally stopping his body, Zyadishan covered his feet and half squatted down. Although there was no foothold in the clouds, it could relieve the pain on the spiritual level. Yu and Dazi did not intend to give him a chance to breathe, so he slashed a sword in front. The black light flashed, and the sword energy rushed into the sky, easily cutting through the clouds. Seeing the power of this attack, Zyadishan knew that this sword could not be taken head on, so he controlled his mental power and jumped up to avoid the sword. Then he drew an gang in the air, and countless needle-like sword ki pierced out. It was the third move of the Kangyu sword art, Kangling Illusion Feather. And as he smiled, without any intention of retreating, but jumped into the thousands of sword ki, rapidly closing the distance between the two. Chumashin was not only not worried about Yu and Dazi's safety, but even more nervous. He knew very well that Yu and Dazi would not do such a thing to commit suicide, so he immediately flew towards him, wanting to see if there was any chance. Although he would definitely not be injured by the sword ki, there might be a flaw when he dodged. Yu and Dazi saw the sword ki clearly and dodged left and right among the feathers, transformed by the spiritual power. When he rushed through the sword formation, no feather transformed by the sword ki fell on him. No flaw. Zyadishan felt disappointed again, but he had already come in front of Yu and Dazi, so he could only confront Yu and Dazi head on. When the swords of both sides collided, Chumashin felt a huge force on the knife, and almost couldn't even hold the knife. He himself was also affected, and was pushed back more than 10 meters by this force. Dazi took advantage of his inability to move, and charged at him again. Seeing the dark blade getting closer and closer to him again, Demishin manipulated the direction of his mental power flow, and a small platform formed in the air. Then he poked the small barrier with his elbow, and his body moved a little to the side due to the reaction force, and narrowly avoided his sword. Then countless platforms flashed in the air, and Demishin's whereabouts became very strange, making it difficult to predict where he would appear. This is the first half of the floating light, which can slightly distort the light and use the body movement and light to affect the opponent's vision and hearing. And as he held the blade upright in front of his chest, I wonder how it compares to my chaotic shadow? As soon as the voice fell, he was left with only an illusory shadow. And as he himself also caught his magic power and left there, quickly moving behind Demishin. Not good. When Zyadishan reacted, the blade was about to fall on his head. He quickly raised his sword to defend himself, but Yu and Daz's sword still left a cut on his face. Chumashin retreated dozens of meters, touched his face, and his heart sank. He knew that this blade had a characteristic of increasing damage. Sure enough, although it was only a small cut, the blood still kept flowing down, and the wound was also spreading to both sides. But he still did not retreat. There is no time to fight a protracted war now. I must find a way to break the situation. Just as Chumashin was thinking hard about how to break the situation, Yu and Dazi put his dark blade back into his cloak. Okay, that's enough of the joke. Is the new weapon I gave you working well? Zyadishan saw that he suddenly changed his nature and stood there, not knowing what to say. Because he was not sure whether this guy really changed his mind or wanted to trick him over and kill him. Seeing that Chumashin was still hesitating, Yu and Dazi added the second level wind walking technique to himself. With a speed 5 times faster, he almost crossed a distance of dozens of meters in an instant and appeared behind him. Okay, let's go back first. As for why I do this, I'll tell you right away. Yu and Dazi grabbed his shoulders, and the dark star cloak wrapped the two of them again and sent them back to the house below. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318 Mathematics is taught by the pet teacher. After listening to Yu and Daz's reasons, Zio-shan sat in his seat and sighed helplessly. Why didn't you explain it to me clearly? Do you know how sad I was when you stabbed me just now? Yu and as he also spread his hands helplessly and explained, there is nothing I can do about it. In a desperate state, the Horcrux and the owner are most compatible. After knowing the whole story, Chumashin no longer wanted to pursue it. Forget it, let's not talk about this. We have no vegetables at home, so let's go out and buy some vegetables. After a brief discussion, the two of them unanimously decided to celebrate with steak tonight. After all, they had just obtained these treasures, and it would be a shame if they didn't spend them well. After dinner, Yu and Dazi picked up the phone and dialed Kodama Yoshio's number. On Miyagi, may I ask what you want to do? The first sentence from the other side made his eyes twitch involuntarily. I'd like to state again that I'm a magician, not an Onmyagi. Okay Onmyagi, I got it, Onmyagi. Yu and Dazi sighed helplessly and decided not to discuss this issue with him anymore. It's like this, I found some ancient treasures when I went out today, and I want you to help us sell them. Kodama Yoshio immediately agreed. No problem, I'll ask someone to go over and do an appraisal now. No need to bother, you are in the same office as last time, right? He was silent for a while before saying, this is my office landline. Where do you think I should be? Hearing his complaints, Yu and as his eyes instantly turned into dead fish eyes. Oh, I'm so sorry, my IQ is in arrears. Then he hung up the phone and teleported directly to him. Then he took out all the gold, jewelry and some jades in his pocket, and placed them in front of Kodama Yoshio. He saw this child suddenly appear in front of him, and he didn't come back to his senses until Yu and Dazi took out all the things. Then he looked at so many treasures, and was hit by him again, and entered a state of petrification. Seeing him like this, Yu and Dazi sighed. As a president, is he so cowardly? After waiting for him to finally get rid of the petrification, he immediately picked up the phone. Call two people over quickly, I have something to deal with here. Then he asked the secret technique next to him to bring a cup of tea to Yu and Dazi, and quietly waited for his men to arrive. Within 2 minutes, several men in black suits came here and asked the president what help they needed. Count these things and make 2 lists, one for this yin-yang master. Kodama Yoshio was directing his men, and he yawned out of boredom. Originally, if Yu and Dazi was asked to count this matter, it would only take 10 seconds. But in order to maintain fairness, it would be better to let them count as well, so that no one would say that he was bullying. More than 10 minutes later, the 2 members of the club put the list in front of Yu and Dazi. Let me see, there are 182 small golds and 65 large golds. 14 pieces of jewelry, 6 pieces of jade. After reading it, he slowly put down the list and picked up the teacup. Is your math taught by the physical education teacher? Because these things are less than the number he detected with his mental power, he asked this question. Unexpectedly, the 2 people not only did not panic, but agreed calmly. Yes, at that time, our physical education teacher taught math part-time. Yu and Dazi immediately spit out a mouthful of tea, all of which splashed on Kodama Yoshio, staining his expensive suit. Ahem, I actually forgot that the physical education teacher here does teach math part-time. Yu and Dazi wiped the corner of his mouth and felt a little speechless about the current situation. The 2 members of the club came over and grabbed him immediately. How dare you disrespect our boss? Yu and Dazi was also unhappy. You guys dared to embezzle my treasures, and you dared to grab my collar like this? Your clothes are free, right? So Yu and Dazi grabbed their wrists with his backhand and twisted their hand bones. Seeing them kneeling on the ground in pain, Yu and Dazi counted the accounts expressionlessly. The amount you counted is that 11 small gold coins are missing, 8 large gold coins are missing, and 1 piece of jewelry and jade each. Then he put the list in front of Kodama Yoshio and turned around to leave. But just follow what your physical education teacher taught you, and the extra money will be regarded as my sponsorship of medical expenses and tuition. Then the darkness enveloped Yu and Dazi's body and quickly shrank and disappeared. It was okay to give them some handling fees for the things they sold and put the data on the table, and everyone could bargain. But like these people, they only do some petty thefts and hiding things, which really disgusted him. Seeing him leave, Kodama Yoshio finally breathed a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat off his face and began to scold his subordinates. Sorry, boss, we really didn't know this was the Onmyagi. The two younger brothers knelt on the ground, not even daring to breathe. The president sat in his seat and thought for a long time, and finally gave up the idea of punishing them. These people were new cadres who were promoted some time ago, so they didn't know him as a magician. But now Kodomiyoshio must let them get to know each other well, so that no one will mess with him again in the future. Okay, you guys go and sign up for a math competition class for me immediately, and come back when you win the first prize in the competition. The two men instantly turned into bitter faces, which made them more uncomfortable than killing them directly. After returning home, Zayashi has already started reading, and Yu and Daisy left here again and set out to find Shizuka. This time Shizuka was indeed at home, and Yu and Daisy met him smoothly. What have you been doing these days? I heard from your mother that you have not been at home all the time. Shizuka covered his mouth with his hand and took Yu and Daisy to his bedroom before saying, I went out to find those criminals. After all, I want to collect negative emotions. He poured 2 glasses of juice and placed them next to him and sat down and chatted with Daisy while drinking water, but it has become more and more difficult to do these days. After all, the number of criminals is not that large. Yu and Daisy was delighted and said quickly, in fact, I did come to you because of the negative emotions. There is something that needs you to purify. After taking out the soul stone, he felt the dark power, and his eyes were straight with excitement. He pointed at the soul stone with trembling. Is this thing really for me? Yu and Daisy nodded. You can absorb the negative emotions of this thing, but you are not allowed to touch the soul power inside. He immediately snatched it from Daz's hand. Deal. Anyway, soul power is not of much use to me. After solving the 2 things, he returned home refreshed and was ready to rest. After Zayashi read for a while, he asked me to send him to the cloud. Before, because he didn't have a sword, his swordsmanship practice had been intermittent. Now he wants to make up for the time. These days, they stayed at home and enjoyed the postal service. No, they were practicing swordsmanship and magic. Until Thursday, Shizuka returned the soul stone to them with a happy face. Yu and Daisy felt it and found that the soul power in it was about 30% less. After these harmful things were purified, the only thing left was the purest soul power. I gave the stone to Zayashi and asked him to take this opportunity to quickly improve his mental power. So these 2 days, everyone was immersed in the excitement of improving their strength and enjoyed it. On Saturday, Zayashi took a call and took him to school. The call was from the teacher, asking him to go back today to do a general cleaning. After arriving at the school, Yu and Daisy wanted to use magic to clean the place directly, but was stopped by Zayashi. It's better to do it yourself. It's also a kind of happiness to see the environment become beautiful in your hands. Chapter 319 A World Without Blame. There was no other way, so Yu and Daisy had to pick up the broom to sweep the floor. Zayashi took out a rag and began to wipe every table carefully. After a morning, most of the stains in the classroom were cleaned by them. That's about it. I'll come back tomorrow to deal with the spider webs on it. Yu and Daisy looked at the clean and tidy floor and suddenly felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart. What Emerson said was indeed true. The place you cleaned by yourself is indeed more comfortable to look at than the place you cleaned with magic. The teacher also came back from cleaning the office. Seeing that they cleaned it so clean, he was also very happy. So he waved his hand and invited the 2 children. Thank you for your hard work. How about coming to the teacher's house for lunch today? Yu and Daisy and the others heard that they didn't have to cook for themselves, so they immediately agreed. After they thoroughly cleaned the classroom, the corridor outside, and the shoe cabinet on Sunday, they had to prepare for the start of school. So they also went back and prepared to pack up their things to welcome the start of the next semester. At this time, Nobita was still hanging out outside, and I don't know if he had finished his homework. The next morning, April 1st, Nobita decided to play a joke on the world. What did you say? Nobita, you haven't done your homework at all. Are you still a student like this? Nobita looked at his homework book helplessly and found Doraemon with a smile. Doraemon, please help me. If I go back to school like this, I will definitely be scolded and kicked out of the classroom. Doraemon would not help him at this time and immediately folded his hands and chose to ignore. This is impossible. Since you didn't do your homework, you should be punished. TSK. What? Nobita was very unhappy when he saw that his request was rejected. So he opened the closet and took out the spare pocket from the bed. No. Doraemon immediately wanted to stop him, but Nobita kicked him in the face and used the advantage of his long legs to block him. Damn it, Nobita, you will definitely not get a good result if you do this. Seeing that he couldn't stop Nobita, he didn't struggle in vain. Nobita took out the telephone booth from Doraemon's pocket, walked in and started to create a new world. After thinking for a while in front of the phone, Nobita finally said, "I want a world without scolding." As the ringing sounded, the origin of this world changed again. Zyadishin and Daisuke, who were at home, suddenly felt uncomfortable and couldn't help but cover their heads. But fortunately, he was already a third level magician, otherwise his soul would definitely be traumatized by this unprepared heavy blow. Zyadishin would also feel uncomfortable because his strength had reached a certain level and he could feel the rules of heaven and earth. Old man Ling Feng also began to roar in his sea of consciousness, which bastard is it, changing the rules of the world at will. And as he blurted out without thinking, "Is there any need to say this?" The only person with this ability and motivation is Nobita using the telephone booth. This time, with the improvement of their strength, they could already feel the part of the rule change. That guy added a rule that you are not allowed to scold people in the rules of the world. And as he discovered this new rule and was immediately angry and amused, Zyadishin also covered her head. It's likely that he didn't finish his homework and wanted to avoid the teacher's punishment. The two sighed helplessly together. This guy is really hopeless. At this time, Nobita was showing off in front of Doraemon. Seeing that Doraemon didn't speak, Nobita had to go downstairs to have breakfast. As for Doraemon, he looked at Nobita's back and began to think about whether it was right or wrong for him to stay here. Nobita relied too much on his props, so he didn't work hard at all. After Nobita went downstairs, he found that it was still early today, so he turned on the TV. At this time, Daichi and Zyadishin also turned on the TV and tuned to the familiar news channel. A handsome middle-aged man was explaining today's education news on the screen. Today we have invited the famous education expert, Mr. Hankheim, to explain to us the future development of education. The camera turned to a middle-aged man with shiny hair, which made Yu and Daisuke feel sick. How much hair wax did this guy use? He snatched the microphone from the host and began to speak at length. Ladies and gentlemen, scolding people will not make the world a better place. We can't do things that will hurt people. We must be gentle to others and influence them with love. Yu and Daisuke and Imushin looked down on them. Who would believe such nonsense? But Nobita was overjoyed after hearing this. That's great. The world has really changed. Imushin pouted unhappily. Really, scolding is to make people progress. A world without scolding will only make the world gradually regress. Yu and Daisuke held his rice bowl, his hands shaking constantly. He suddenly found that this world seemed perfect for him. Daisuke, what happened to your hand? Are you sick? He shook his head excitedly. No, I just think this world is pretty good. Izuku put down the bowl immediately. Why are you like this too? Don't you know? At this point, he suddenly found that he couldn't say the next words, as if an invisible force stopped him. Ian and Daisy shook the spoon in front of him and said proudly, "Have you forgotten? In this world, blame is illegal." Izuku looked at him angrily, and his eyes said it all. Ian and Daisy smiled and finished the rest of the meal, then washed the dishes, and prepared to go to school. Zyadishin was a little worried. He knew that Yu and Daisy would not be as calm as he thought he looked. This guy would definitely do something. Nobita was also eating at this time. Breakfast was porridge and pickled radish. Looking at the radish in front of him, he suddenly wanted to try whether the world had really changed. So Nobita thrust the pickled radish forward and said, "Mom, I don't like radish." Nobita's mother immediately went into a state of rage. "What did you say? Dare you say that again?" The mother had only said half of her words when her father grabbed her. "Mother, have you forgotten that it is not good to blame others?" Then he gently said to Nobita, "Forget it if you don't like it. Just give it to me." Nobita happily handed the radish to his father and then looked at Doraemon proudly. Doraemon finished his meal in silence and returned to his room. Without anyone noticing, the morning news outside was still playing. Dear compatriots, don't blame others. In the near future, blaming others will be severely punished. Accompanied by a burst of devilish laughter from Benkimo, the morning news ended happily. When Nobita returned to the second floor, Doraemon was sitting on the desk sulking. Nobita immediately put on a smiling face. Really, why are you so angry? Isn't this good enough? Doraemon pointed at him and yelled, don't you really know why we blame you? Hearing what Doraemon said, Nobita still pretended to be stupid, but isn't this world good enough? Doraemon was too lazy to talk nonsense with him, and directly opened the drawer. Seeing his actions, Nobita suddenly had a bad premonition. Why do you want to go back to the future? Chapter 320 The Horrible World. Doraemon's attitude was very cold. Yes, I'm going to go find Doraemon to relax. I believe you will regret it soon. After saying that, he let go of his hand and sank into the drawer. Doraemon sat in the time machine and sighed heavily. Given his condition, is it really good for him to stay here? Just like that, he began to adjust the time and set up the itinerary for this time. Nobita was very dissatisfied when he saw Doraemon like this. Really, what kind of attitude is he in this way? He even said that he is a childlike robot. Then Nobita also carried his school bag and embarked on today's school journey. On the way, although there was not enough time, Nobita still walked slowly and thought proudly in his heart, anyway, there is no scolding in this world, so what does it matter if I'm late? Daisy and Zyashin came to the classroom and sat in their seats. Zyashin still didn't give up the idea of preaching and kept chattering beside him. Daisy, even if no one else preaches, we must restrain ourselves. Gian and Daisy reluctantly pushed him to his seat and asked him to sit down. Okay, I know what you said. Let me indulge myself today, just for one day, okay? After getting Gian and Daisy's promise, Chumushin stopped preaching and started to sit down and read. He also returned to his seat, put his feet on the table and swayed comfortably. Zyashin accidentally glanced at him and turned an angle. Out of sight, out of mind. Not long after, other students also came to the classroom. Seeing Yu and Daisy in this state, they all looked at him unhappily. Why is this guy so arrogant? They didn't like Yu and Daisy's behavior either, but they couldn't say it, and they couldn't beat him, so they could only pretend not to see it. After a while, Nobita and the teacher also came in with a bell for class. And the teacher also brought someone, that is, Lisa Nayu, an exchange student from China. There's no need to introduce this student, right? Come on, let's applaud and welcome him back. Applause rang out in the classroom, sending him back to his seat. Zyashin had already collected all the homework and stood in front of Nobita waiting for him to hand it in. Unexpectedly, Nobita took out a blank homework book in front of the teacher. I'm so sorry, I didn't do any of it. Seeing Nobita's arrogant look, the teacher and Zyashin felt very unhappy. Nobita, you guys are so arrogant, even though you didn't do your homework. Other students were also whispering nearby, expressing their dissatisfaction with Nobita's behavior. But Nobita's face has been trained to be as thick as a city wall, and he doesn't care about these at all. The teacher blushed and really wanted to scold him, but held back. Just when the teacher was about to give up, a shoe hit Nobita's face. Everyone immediately looked at the culprit, Yu and Daisy, who was sitting in the corner. He put his legs on the table and leaned back, looking down on others. Oh, I'm so sorry, my shoe just flew out by accident. Nobita got up from the ground, picked up Yu and Daisy's shoe and started shouting. Teacher, he obviously did it on purpose. He deliberately hit someone in class. But who knew that the teacher looked embarrassed? But even so, I can't scold him. Nobita's heart tightened. Can't scold people. Doesn't that mean Yu and Daisy can do whatever he wants? Just when Nobita was about to continue arguing, the other shoe flew to his face. Oh, why am I so careless? I accidentally let the other shoe fly out. Yu and Daisy apologized insincerely, then stood up and prepared to collect the tools used in the crime. Nobita put away his shoes and said, you are such a nasty guy. You hit someone and didn't even say sorry. It's really. Nobita was interrupted by teacher Katoji when he was halfway through his words. No, Nobita, it's wrong to blame others. We should use love to make this world a better place. And you and Daisy has already apologized, so you shouldn't care about these trivial matters. Seeing that the teacher was defending you and Daisy without any reason, Nobita began to collapse. What are you talking about? You should be scolded for hitting someone. As he said that, Nobita sat on the ground and started to act like a rogue. You and Daisy stepped on his stomach and squatted down to pick up his shoes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think I accidentally stepped on something. After putting on his shoes, Yu and Daisy pulled Nobita's collar and lifted him up. I have apologized so sincerely. I believe you won't blame me, Nobita. Nobita was pinched by him and had difficulty breathing. He looked at all the students present for help, but the students present all agreed. Yes, Nobita, just forgive Yuan. As the air in his lungs ran out, Nobita felt his eyes gradually blurry. He had no choice but to put his last hope on the class monitor Dekisugi. Dekisugi, help. Yuan and AG wants to kill me. But Xiaoshan's words shattered his last glimmer of hope. No, I can't blame him. Yuan and AG smiled with satisfaction and then let go of his hand. Nobita fell to the ground, just covering his neck and breathing heavily. Seeing him like this, Yuan and AG leaned close to his ear. What's wrong? Isn't this the world you created without scolding? Then why do you want someone to solve problems with scolding? Then he grabbed Nobita's shoulders and lifted him up again. Look, this world without scolding is so beautiful. As soon as the voice fell, Shizuka released a lot of negative emotions at the same time, and the students below also cheered. This world is really full of love. Then, under the lead of Yu and Daiji, other students also began to go crazy. During class, they chased and played, and books were thrown all over the place. Nobita was hit on the head by many things. Fat Tiger also came over and said a little embarrassedly, Yuan classmate, can you give Nobita to me? Yuan as he looked at him curiously, oh, what do you want to do with this useless waste? Fat Tiger clenched his fists, of course I use it to beat people, to vent my anger. Anyway, my teacher and mother won't blame me now. Looking at this chaotic classroom, Nobita suddenly felt desperate. Is this a world without scolding? The strong children have no constraints, and they will not be punished for making mistakes. Yuan as he smiled and handed Nobita to Fat Tiger, beat them as you like, as long as you don't beat them to death. Fat Tiger took over Nobita, whose eyes were gradually losing focus, and began to move his fists. Nobita shouted with all his last strength, I don't want such a world. The chaos did not stop because of this roar, but became more lively. Shizuka was taking the opportunity to absorb negative emotions, and now he was extremely happy. In a world without supervision, everyone's desires will be infinitely magnified. Izuku sat in his seat and sighed helplessly. Since Daiji said there was only one day, he would not intervene, as long as no one died today. But even if everyone was indulging themselves, they still avoided Izuku intentionally or unintentionally, not wanting to provoke this person. Yuan Daiji was like a conductor, smiling at his and Shizuka's masterpiece. Nobita was beaten to the ground by Fat Tiger and his glasses were half broken. Yuan Daiji went over, helped him up, and let him look at the chaotic classroom. Look, how beautiful the world without blame is. Chapter 321 A Changing Future. Doraemon returned to Shizuka's home with a heavy heart. At this time, Shizuka was doing his homework seriously in his room. Doraemon, why are you back? Is there something wrong over there? Shizuka closed his computer and began to care about this childlike robot. After all, Doraemon has been in their family for more than 10 years. It is impossible to say that he has no feelings for him. Oh, don't mention it. The blue fat man waved his hand and sat on the sofa in the living room. Nobita is really a worrying guy. I'm almost mad at him. By the way, where is my sister? Shizuka pointed to the kitchen. We just had breakfast, and now Doremi is washing the dishes. Then Shizuka stood up. I will wash the dishes. You and Doremi go out for a walk. It's also a break. Doremi was washing the dishes using the ancient method. Because their family was poor, they didn't buy such non-essential things. Seeing her brother coming, Doremi put down the plate in her hand and went to greet him. Brother, how come you suddenly have time to go back to the future? Did Nobita make you angry again? Shizuka pushed Doremi out of the kitchen. Take Doraemon out for a walk and leave the rest to me. So the brother and sister walked out the door and prepared to go to the German orthopedics. No, to the nearby park. Oni-chan, did Nobita make you angry again? Doremi pressed the elevator button while caring about Doraemon's recent situation. The blue fat man covered his head helplessly. He didn't do his homework for a holiday, and he secretly used my props to avoid punishment. Doremi also sighed. It seems that his situation is still so troublesome, and Shizuka here is much less worried. The two walked out of the elevator and walked on the way to the park. Doraemon became more and more angry on the way. Nobita really deserves a lesson. But Doraemon didn't know Nobita's current situation, otherwise he would start to sympathize with him again. By the way, Doraemon, is there any store selling dorayaki nearby? Doraemon had almost forgotten the terrain of the area because he hadn't been back for so long. Of course, I can buy some pineapple bread by the way. The sister smiled and led Doraemon to a snack shop next to it. What did you say? No pineapple bread? How could it be? Doraemon had already bought dorayaki, but the sister had to go home empty-handed. The two of them came to the park together and found a pretty good bench to sit down. However, compared with Doraemon's memory, the environment here has become very bad. Garbage bags everywhere, trampled lawns, and people making loud noises made Doraemon very uncomfortable. So he sat on the chair and ate the dorayaki angrily. Nobita is really a guy. He knows how to play all day long and escape from reality. Doraemon picked up a piece of dorayaki and put it in his mouth, complaining to his sister. Doremi just sat there and listened quietly. She knew that Nobita was a troublesome kid and her brother needed to vent his anger. When I get back, if Nobita hasn't finished his homework, I will definitely scold him. The blue fat man thought he didn't say anything serious, but Doremi was frightened and quickly stopped him. Brother, keep your voice down. In the future world, scolding others is not allowed by law. Doraemon was stunned for a moment, and then he remembered that the future world was also changed by the telephone booth. While they were talking, an old man couldn't stand it anymore, so he scolded the two young men who trampled on the lawn. But in less than 3 seconds, a patrol robot caught him. We will arrest you for scolding others now. The old man helplessly dropped his crutches. Is there still morality and law in this world? The patrol robot ignored his complaints and carried him on its shoulders and took him away. No, now even the future world has changed. I have to go back quickly. As he said that, he hugged dorayaki and started running towards Shizuka's house. Doraemon stood up and wanted to leave with him, but she suddenly saw the man selling pineapple bread. Ah, pineapple bread. Boss, wait for me. I want to buy pineapple bread. Doraemon gave up her brother and started chasing the robot who was buying bread. Doraemon was running on the way home when he was suddenly hit by several naughty children behind him. The three of them stood on a flying skateboard and looked down at Doraemon below. What's going on? It turned out to be a raccoon robot. The boy in the red jacket, who was leading the group, landed in front of Doraemon and began to taunt him. Doraemon saw that these children were only about 6 or 7 years old, and he didn't want to care so much. But the word raccoon violated his bottom line, so he couldn't stand it. Apologize to me quickly. You hit someone and still say hurtful words there. It's too much. Now he didn't even want his dorayaki and stood on the ground and scolded the children. Just when the battle was about to escalate, a powerful voice came from the back. Stop. The tall figure appeared in everyone's sight, making Doraemon's heart tighten. It seems that this guy's their guardian. There will be a big fight soon. The 2-meter-tall robot stood in front of Doraemon. The atmosphere between the two sides was very tense. At this time, the guardian robot suddenly knelt down in front of Doraemon. I'm sorry, I apologize on behalf of the students. Doraemon was also shocked by this change. He didn't know what to say now. I'm their class teacher, Robot Yakiku. The students didn't mean it. Please forgive them. Seeing him like this, Doraemon didn't know what to say. So Doraemon cleared his throat. In this case, then I forgive. Hey Yakiku, what are you doing there? It's this raccoon cat who should apologize. The leading boy didn't want to see his teacher humble himself, so he stopped his teacher. Doraemon was so angry that his face turned red. Really? Who are you calling a raccoon cat? I'm a cat-shaped robot. A cat. The teacher quickly corrected him. You can't do that. You aren't a. It's hurtful to talk like that. But Yuanta didn't care about what the teacher said at all and continued to mock Doraemon. "Oh, what about your ears?" The boy flew over and pointed at Doraemon's empty head. "I have never seen a cat-shaped robot like you without ears." Hearing that his pain was exposed nakedly by others, the blue fat man was completely furious, and his big blue and white face turned red with anger. "If you want to say that about me, then you are finished." Doraemon released some of his horsepower and prepared to give him a hug to kill his sister. Just when Doraemon was about to catch him, a hand suddenly grabbed Yuanta, leaving the blue fat man empty-handed. Doraemon looked up and saw that the owner of the hand was Yukiku, the head teacher of this group of naughty children. At this time, he looked down with anger and ferocity. Chapter 322 The Meaning of Scolding. Doraemon was even angrier when he saw him favoring students like this. "Do you really think I'm a vegetarian?" After Shixia's tireless transformation of him using future technology, Doraemon's horsepower is now enough to reach 129.3 horsepower. This is no joke. So the blue fat man prepared to remove his own safety restrictions and demolish this protective head teacher and the naughty child next to him. Just when Doraemon was about to explode completely, the teacher suddenly put Yuante on his shoulder. No matter what, saying such hurtful words is absolutely unforgivable. After saying that, he slapped Yuante on the butt. He was frightened by the pain and then begged loudly on the teacher's shoulder. Doraemon was stunned by the teacher's reversal. The other two students saw that the teacher was furious and hurriedly drove away on the skateboard. And Yukiku was still slapping the child one slap after another, with no intention of stopping. But the good times didn't last long. A few seconds later, several patrol robots arrived at the scene. "We will arrest you for the crime of reprimanding." Doraemon quickly protected the teacher. No, he just reprimanded the disobedient child. The leading robot sheriff saw that someone here was reckless and began to scan Doraemon. With his authority, he easily read Doraemon's memory. So, Doraemon's memory of reprimanding Nobita today and in the past was easily read by the other party. This guy is an absolute reprimand maniac. Arrest him too. All the patrol robots raised their hands and prepared to fire sticky bullets. Seeing that the situation was not good, the teacher knew that he could not implicate the child, so he quickly threw Yuanta off his body. Da. After a burst of machine gun fire, the two robots were wrapped in black spheres. These things are very sticky and form a cocoon on their body, making them unable to move. Then a burst of light fell from the sky and brought teacher Yukiku and Doraemon into the spaceship together. Seeing that the matter was over, the patrol robots below left and went to patrol other places. The thrown Yuanta still looked at the spaceship in the sky and began to regret what he had done. "If it weren't for me, the teacher and the cat-shaped robot would not have been arrested." At this time, Doremi finally bought the pineapple bread and began to look for her brother. "Really, it's only been a while, and my brother ran away." At this time, she saw Yuanta kneeling on the ground and went over to ask him about the situation. "Hey, little brother, have you seen a blue cat-shaped robot?" Yuanta, who was blaming himself, heard the name and quickly stood on the skateboard and ran away. He didn't want to face this robot now because he was afraid that she was here to seek revenge. Doremi looked at the fleeing Yuanta with a puzzled look on her face. "Really, am I so scary? Alas, this is." She bent down and picked up the dorayaki on the ground. Looking at the scattered snacks, Doremi now felt that something might have happened here. And as he looked at the students who were gradually liberating themselves in the classroom and smiled. "Yes, that's it. In a country without scolding, you can do whatever you want." He tore up Dakshin's textbook and threw the scraps into the sky. "No one will criticize you, and no one will bear any legal responsibility." And as he walked forward in the paper scraps and turned to face everyone, "This is heaven." Dakshin behind him looked at the papers around him helplessly. "Damn, this is my book. If you have the guts, tear up your own book." The teacher on the stage finally couldn't stand it anymore. "And as he, go back to your seat." The huge voice made the scene quiet for a moment, and then everyone looked at him. And as he looked at him in surprise and didn't expect that he could break the rules and yell at people. But he smiled and nodded and agreed. "Okay, since you asked me to do this, I'll go back." But the others continued to make a fuss because the teacher didn't yell at them just now. and in their concept, it is wrong to teach people a lesson, and the teachers yelling made them even more unhappy. Just like that, the classroom became extremely lively. Everyone's books were torn to pieces, and even the walls were covered with graffiti with neutral pens. Seeing this scene in the classroom, the teacher no longer wanted to care. First, he also felt that he shouldn't scold people, and second, he no longer had the energy to do so. Enough. Stop it. Now go back to your seats and prepare for class. This time, it was Chumushin who couldn't help it. He really couldn't stand such an atmosphere. Chumushin's mental power was released involuntarily, shocking everyone present. They only felt that the class monitor was emitting a sense of pressure from a superior, so they didn't dare to resist. So everyone had to return to their seats and began to listen to the teacher's class. The teacher finally breathed a sigh of relief, took out the textbook, and began to teach everyone today's knowledge. But as soon as he said a word, the two classes next to him exploded. They heard the noise here, so other students began to liberate themselves. However, the other two classes didn't have someone like Chumushin who could calm the situation, so they couldn't stop. They kicked the door open and started to throw a tantrum everywhere. This process was also secretly promoted by Shizuka, otherwise it would not have been like this. Shizuka also felt the change in the rules today, so he thought of this method to collect negative emotions. As a result, the strike was like a wave, and students from one class after another rushed out of the classroom. Now the whole school is in chaos, with no order at all. Seeing that everyone had run out, and as he walked up to Nobita who was still on the ground and said, "Look at this world you created. It's really a paradise, isn't it?" He looked at the scene outside that was like 100 demons parading at night, and continued, "Look, everyone is having so much fun." Nobita dragged his bruised body to his feet and looked him in the eye. "No, this is not paradise." And as he still had a smile on his face, "Why not? No one scolds you, isn't that what you expect? No way. What I hope is that children can grow up healthily in a world without scolding." He pointed to the corridor outside, "Not this kind of chaos that breaks the order." "Really? Don't you know why someone would scold you?" And as he grabbed Nobita's head, "If you can grow up healthily by your own will, who would scold you?" Then and as he forced Nobita to turn his head and look at Zayashin who was still reading a book, so that he could recognize the difference between the two. "Do you think that, if no one scolded you, you would sit there reading like him? Look, when others can scold him, he will not be scolded by anyone. Don't you think about why you are scolded?" Hearing and Eiji say this, Nobita was silent, because he knew that he would never be as good as Dekisugi. Chapter 323 Doraemon is in trouble. When Nobita was silent, and as he dragged him to the window again and asked him to take a good look at the situation below. All the classmates were chasing and fighting on the playground below, destroying public property, just like the end of the world. There were also many strong children who were bullying other children. Because the laws here cannot restrain us children. Children need others to discipline them so that they don't go astray. And you? Because you don't want to pay for your mistakes, you do this kind of thing willfully. I think you should let Doraemon go back. If he stays with you, it will only make you weaker and go against his original intention." After saying that, and as he threw him away and sat back in his seat. "It's almost time to play, so take a good rest." After Doraemon in the future was caught, he was sent to the prison built for robots, Gratitude Prison. In the square of the prison, the warden and the prosecutor were waiting for them inside. "Welcome to this place. This is a prison for robots that scold people. We will teach you to be grateful." The tenants next to them also bowed. "Arigato." Note, this is a joke, because the Japanese words for thank you and tenants have the same pronunciation. The robots were led to the cave in trance and were about to enter the prison to serve their sentences. At this moment, an octopus robot could no longer bear it, and with a little effort, he opened the iron shackles on his hands. "I will stay here forever. Goodbye, you idiots." The octopus robot ran to the high wall and began to climb up using its bionic suction cups. Doraemon also focused his attention. If this guy succeeded, he would also escape from prison in this way. The prosecutor was about to go over to deal with him, but the warden stopped him. "Instructor Donpa, don't be so anxious. Don't worry, he can't run away." So the instructor in white also quieted down, and the two of them just stood on the ground, watching the octopus robot climb higher and higher. At this moment, several mechanical caterpillars suddenly floated over. Someone is trying to escape the prison. Emergency measures are initiated immediately. The white silk thread instantly wrapped around him. What the hell is this? The octopus robot fell from the sky because it lost its fulcrum, but it was not injured because of the protection of the silk thread. The ants next to it immediately came over and took the robot away. The warden spoke again. People like this who don't know how to be grateful should be taught well. Instructor Junpei also smiled. Yes, Director Majime, you are really gentle, so kind to these robots. After praising each other for a few words, they continued to lead the team to go down. Just as they were about to step into the cave, Junpei suddenly turned around and looked at the robots behind him with squinting eyes. You should take a good look at the sky now, because this is the last time you will see the sky in your life. After placing these newly imprisoned robots, the warden Majime continued to search for the reason for the changes in the world. Finally, he froze the time TV at the time when Nobita used the telephone booth. This prop. What about the telephone booth? Wasn't it taken back by the government a long time ago? I remember that only 2 childlike robots were licensed to hold it. After figuring this out, Majime was even happier. I didn't expect to be so lucky this time. God really wants our tribe to prosper. Then he left here in a hurry and got on the time machine in his drawer. Since this is God's will, I must grasp it well. That's the right thing to do. Majime took out his comb and combed his shiny bangs neatly. Then he started the time machine. In order to make my tribe prosper forever, I must take this thing away. The target is April 1st, 1981. Set off now. Nobita lay on the ground for a long time and finally realized his mistake. That's right. It's all because of my badness that they scolded me. I shouldn't escape. I should face it bravely. This time he stood up again. I want to go back and restore the world to its original state. After making up his mind, he left the classroom. And as he yawned beside him, lamenting that his happy time was about to end, and Dekisugi also put down his book. The world was finally going to return to its original state. Then he stood up and walked to Daisuke, looking at him unhappily. Look at you. What have you ruined my first day of school today? We spent 2 days cleaning up the place and you made it like this. Don't you think about it? Just as Zayashi was lecturing Daisuke, Nobita came back in a panic. It's a big deal. The phone booth is gone. And Daisuke and Dekisugi immediately stopped what they were doing and looked at Nobita together. What did you say just now? Nobita shouted breathlessly. I just went home and then I found that the phone booth that was supposed to be in my room was gone. And as he immediately stood up and moved his wrist. Come on, take me to your house. The 3 of them came to Nobita's room and began to check the situation here. The teacher did not stop them. At least on the bright side, these children were the last few to walk out of the classroom door in the school. Nobita's home looked no different than before, so Yu and Daisuke had to reach out. Nobita, you should have taken the spare pocket, right? Take out the time-lapse TV and see what happened here. Nobita then remembered that he still had this prop, so he quickly took it out, adjusted the time and started investigating. Not long after, they saw a man with his hair combed like ant antennae appear here and steal the telephone booth stealthily. Who is this uncle? How can he steal my things? Nobita's hair stood up in anger. Zayashi quickly reminded him, this is not the point. The point is that he came from the future and knows the function of this prop. Nobita looked at Dekisugi in confusion. Why do you say this is the point? Because people from the future came here. It means that the future world has changed. And I don't know if he wants this change to continue or to end in the future. But as far as the current situation is concerned, the possibility of wanting this to continue is greater. After saying this, Yu and Daisuke looked around in confusion. By the way, where is Doraemon? Nobita was frightened by Yu and Daisuke's words and changed color. Oh no, Doraemon is now in the future. I don't know what he encountered. They quickly put away the time TV and prepared to take the time machine to the 22nd century. When they opened the drawer, they found a bunch of useless erasers, pencils and other things inside. Doraemon went back to the future, so he drove the time machine away. What should I do? Nobita shouted desperately beside him, and Yu and Dazi also began to think about countermeasures. At this moment, the drawer opened by itself, and a yellow head popped out. "Nobita, it's bad. My brother is missing." They looked at Doremi, who had just appeared, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Doremi always came so timely. We have all guessed this, and now we are worried that we can't go to the future. You came just in time. Everyone followed Doremi to the future, and they walked into Central Park. It was still so messy inside, even with the cleaning robot. "This is it. I found the Doraya key that my brother dropped here today." Doremi took them to the place where Doraemon last appeared. They nodded. "Okay, let's start looking from here." Doremi handed them the photo of her brother. "Then I'll trouble you." The four of them separated and looked for clues about Doraemon. Chapter 324, Grateful Prison. Yu and Dazi took the photo of Doraemon and first used his induction to search, at least to see if there was any sign of him within a few hundred meters. However, because there were too many people here and there were not a few robots, the amount of information was huge and the processing was slow. However, he did not find Doraemon, but he found a little boy who had been peeping at them. So Yu and Dazi walked over and grabbed him from the bushes. "Little boy, why are you peeping at us here?" The little boy in red clothes was scared by him, so he poured a glass of juice on Yu and Dazi. "Go away." "Ah, you little brat." Yu and Dazi wiped his eyes angrily and wanted to chase him, but he suddenly stopped. In the current situation, Doraemon was more important. Looking at his receding back, Yu and Dazi snorted. "You are lucky this time." Within the detection range of more than 700 meters of Yu and Dazi, he did not see Doraemon. So he had to ask one by one with the photo, but in the end there was no clue. "I searched all afternoon, but not only did I find nothing, I also attracted a lot of flies." Yu and Dazi drove them away impatiently. "Get away, I'm not the juice you want to drink." But seeing that these flies showed no signs of leaving, Yu and Dazi had to find a place where no one was around. "Since you want to die, you can't blame me." Static electric field. An electric net appeared around me, burning the flies to ashes. Then Yu and Dazi used water magic to wash off the residue on his face. At this time, a message suddenly flashed on the photo machine that Doremi gave Yu and Dazi. He picked it up and took a look. It was a function similar to calling. So he pressed the connect button on it, and the 3D stereo image showed Doremi's appearance. After she appeared, she asked anxiously, "How is it? Do you have any clues?" Yu and Dazi shook his head. "I asked hundreds of passers-by, and no one saw him." At this time, he really regretted why he installed a tracking tag on Nobita, but not on Doraemon. Doremi said helplessly, "Forget it, let's gather at the starting point first. If we don't gather, the other two will get lost." More than an hour later, all the talents returned to the starting point one after another. "I've wanted to ask you since just now, why don't you use the time-lapse TV, Doremi?" Doremi shook her head. "No, there is a time interference shielding device here to prevent us from misusing time-lapse props." There was no way to be lazy. Yu and Dazi sat aside helplessly. "We can't look for it aimlessly like this anymore. We have to find a target." Zyadishan looked at the sunset in the sky. "Yeah, if we keep looking like this, it will be dark outside." Doremi sighed and finally expressed her guess. Maybe he was taken to the robot prison. Yu and Dazi and Dekishan looked at him blankly. "Robot prison? What is that?" After the 22nd century, scolding is prohibited by law. If someone scolds someone else, they will be taken to a human shelter. If a robot scolds someone, they will be sent to a robot shelter. Yu and Dazi looked at the scene nearby and suddenly covered his mouth and laughed. "Then I'm really curious, how has your technology developed over the years?" "That's not the point. We should find a way to find my brother now." Nobita heard what Doremi said and began to blame himself in his heart. The future will become like this, all because of his abusive props. I'm sorry, can you listen to me for a moment?" Yuante, who was not far away, finally plucked up the courage and stood in front of them. "The blue cat-shaped robot you are looking for, I may know where he is." When everyone present heard the news, they all looked at him. "Aren't you the rude kid who played skateboarding during the day?" Doremi also remembered that she met him today. Yu and Dazi also recognized him. "Are you the little boy who splashed juice on my face?" He quickly bowed and apologized. "I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it during the day." Seeing that he admitted his mistake sincerely, and as he was too lazy to pursue the trivial matter, Doraemon hurried over to help him up. "You said you knew the whereabouts of my brother. Where is he now?" Yuan-tae lowered his head. "Because of me, he was arrested and put in the robot shelter, also known as the gratitude prison." As Yuan-tae told the whole story, they also knew that this time the matter was not simple. And as he touched his hair and asked, "What is the origin of this so-called gratitude prison?" Doraemon put away his props. "Come with me now, let's go back to Shizuka's house first and take a good look at what this so-called gratitude prison is." The 5 of them returned to Shizuka's house together, and Doraemon took out her computer and began to check the information of the prison. At this time, it was completely dark. Doraemon finally finished his work for the day and was arranged to eat and lie on the bed to sleep. After the worker ants who were doing the routine room inspection walked past, Doraemon opened his eyes. "Huh, you want to trap me with just these?" Although his treasure bag was taken away, he still had a lot of places to hide things, so a spoon was still easy to hide. He quietly ran to the open space behind the dormitory and took out the soup spoon he had swallowed during the day. "Damn it, I won't stay here forever. Nobita is still waiting for me to go back and teach him a lesson." Doraemon muttered while grinding the soup spoon on the ground to make it look like a knife. After he ground one side flat, he picked it up and looked at it with satisfaction. Then Doraemon walked to the fume hood at the back and unscrewed the screw on it with his newly made knife. "Great, I'm really a genius." Just as Doraemon was complacent, some changes occurred in the place where the screw was unscrewed. An ant head emerged from the hole and turned into a brand new screw. Doraemon saw this change and knew that his plan would not work. The defense here was indeed more strict than he thought. Is it really not allowed? Or are we too naive? The blue fat man was startled by the voice coming from behind and quickly put the spoon back into his mouth. Turning his head, he found that the person behind him was the robot teacher Yakiku. He smiled at Doraemon, then slowly walked to the side. "Mr. Doraemon, what do you want to do when you get out of here?" Doraemon was relieved. At least the person coming now was not an enemy. So he started chatting with him. "Of course I have to go out and teach him a lesson, because if I'm not angry, he won't do his homework." Then Doraemon sighed. Originally, the situation was much better when and Daisy was here. But ever since the last incident, alas. After hearing his words, Yakiku showed a longing expression. "It's amazing, Mr. Doraemon, that you can scold students at will." Yakiku touched his middle-parted mechanical hair and looked at Doraemon seriously. "Until now, I have always treated those disobedient children gently from beginning to end. But in return, they played more and more. The reason why I don't want to scold them is not because I think it's good for them, but because I'm worried that I will be caught here. Now think about it, as a robot teacher, I'm really derelict in my duty." Chapter 325 Actions of All Parties. Doraemon reached out his hand and patted his shoulder, comforting him. "That's not the case. You knew you would be arrested just now, so you should have taught that kid a lesson." Yakiku looked at Doraemon. He just didn't want to see his students say those hurtful words. "Does this count?" Doraemon also looked into the other's eyes and said seriously, "As long as you are willing to seriously point out their mistakes, your voice will definitely be conveyed. You're right. What this world absolutely cannot do without is scolding." 2 people suddenly sat up. It was their roommate who was lecturing the old man Gigi and the tattered little robot. The old robot stroked his beard. "Because I often point out other people's mistakes, I was arrested." The little robot said, "Yes, I just taught a few people who don't cherish things a lesson, and they also arrested me." Their roommate, the sweet potato robot Gangnasuk, also said, "Yes, those people wasted food, and I couldn't help but teach them a lesson." Doraemon looked at these robots who shared the same hatred and suddenly smiled. "It turns out that we are all the same. Let's unite and escape from here together." Gigi walked to the floor and pried open a stone slab with a spoon. "All our efforts in the past few months are here. Under the stone is a bottomless tunnel, which was dug out by these robots bit by bit with spoons. Since you have dug so much, where did the soil you dug go?" Doraemon looked at the hurried ground. "It doesn't look like there is soil here." This depends on everyone's efforts. The old man Gigi pulled out his pocket and a little dust slowly sprinkled on the ground. Seeing this, Doraemon suddenly realized, I know. You put the soil in your pockets, and then quietly sprinkle it on the ore soil when you dig during the day. Yes, that's it. The old man Gigi nodded. Okay, we are ready to escape from prison now, but before that, Tattered, the short and shabby robot, took off his head and took out a few balloons from it. Everyone put clothes on the balloons to deceive the ant guards. According to their plan, everyone walked into the pit. Doraemon thought silently in his heart, wait for me, Nobita, I will come back to you soon. Doraemon changed a website again and searched for relevant information about Gratitude Prison. But no matter how she searched, the final result was that she had no right to access. All the relevant information of this prison seems to have been blocked by someone. There must be some unspeakable secrets in it. And as he looked at the message that he could not access and could only start his own reasoning, there are generally two kinds of things that the prison doesn't want people to know. The first is that they are abusing prisoners and are worried about ruining the reputation of the prison. The second is that they let the prisoners do something shameful. Zyadishan listened to Yu and Daz's analysis and agreed a little. Then which situation do you think this prison belongs to? Do you still need to ask such a simple question? Both of the situations I mentioned are present. Yu and Dazi looked at them and said as if it was a matter of course. Look, these people who were captured are robots. Their performance must be quite good. Isn't it a pity that they are left idle after being captured here? They are simply ready-made labor. They don't need any wages. They only need a small amount of low-quality water and energy. The most important thing is that these robots have no human rights. They can't escape from there and have no right to resist. And in this environment, they are not even allowed to get angry. What reason is there to let such high-quality labor idle? If it were me, I would definitely squeeze them to death. Dakshin became more worried when he heard what Yu and Azhi said. At the same time, he silently stepped away from Yu and Azhi. This guy's thinking didn't seem to be normal. Doraemon disagreed with his point of view, but even if you say so, what can they do on that deserted island? In this regard, Yu and Azhi could only spread his hands. I don't know, maybe there is a shortage of people on the assembly line in a large factory, so they need these robots? Anyway, I won't let them sit idle. Nobita had already comforted Yuanta and was thinking about how to find out the location of Doraemon. While he was thinking, he suddenly touched his pocket. By the way, Doraemon's spare pocket is still here. Nobita knew that the two pockets could be connected to each other. They had used this function in the universe. As long as he quietly used this pocket to go over, he could get to Doraemon. So he immediately stepped forward. Everyone, Just when Nobita was about to tell the story of the pocket, he suddenly stopped talking. Because he felt that this matter was caused by his selfishness, and he should not implicate other people. Seeing that no one else noticed him, Nobita quietly walked to the balcony and took out the spare pocket. Doraemon, I'm sorry, this is all my fault. I'll come over to apologize to you right away. Then he entered the spare pocket and started moving towards another exit. No one noticed it at first, but Yu and Dazhi immediately noticed that Nobita's observation mark had disappeared and hurriedly stood up to check the situation. This thing is the spare pocket? Yu and Dazhi went over to pick it up and immediately figured out what was going on here. You actually use the spare pocket to get through quietly? You're really smart. But I actually forgot about this prop. I was really too anxious. Yu and Dazhi put away the spare pocket and waited for Nobita's observation mark to appear again. Not long after, he felt that Nobita's mark appeared again in a distant place. About 3,000 kilometers away from here. It's within my acceptable range. Yu and Dazhi wanted to go directly through the spare pocket, but he felt that it was not the right time. After all, there was already a Nobita over there. If he was caught, wouldn't Yu and Dazhi go through there again, just to give them a head? But before leaving, Yu and Dazhi decided to leave them some information, so he turned on his computer and started looking for information about the area. After he pulled up the location and photos of the island, Yu and Dazhi said, it's this island. Those robots are most likely locked up here. Zyadishan looked at the place, thought for a moment and immediately figured out the cause and effect of the matter. I see. This is a volcanic area. If it's really like what Daisy said, then these robots are most likely being pulled over to mine the diamonds under the island. Doremi was a little confused. Why? How do you know there are diamonds here? This has to do with the distribution of diamonds. Most of the diamonds on Earth are buried deep underground, and only a few are brought up by magma. And the volcanoes here meet all the conditions for the natural accumulation of diamonds. In other words, there may be a large number of diamonds sleeping underneath. Gian and as he also nodded, then those robots were captured to be gold miners? Doremi immediately took out an airship. Let's go there now. This airship only takes 10 minutes. Seeing that she was actually going to use an airship, Gian and Azzy couldn't help but wonder, why don't you use the portal? Doraemon was also helpless. If the anywhere door can be used at will, then how do those people who sell transportation make money? Gian and Azzy seemed to understand. In other words, things like anywhere doors and time related props cannot be used at will. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.